Oh yes, there. Oh, it is totally happening now. Oh my gosh.
Have you been here alone for a while?
Absolutely. I was making faces before. It was great.
Yeah, I just jumped from another call.
So 52 hours when my wife returns.
Oh, wow. Struggle bus, huh?
This morning, I
1 minute to air.
Let out a really deep sigh and said, "What a day!" And then I looked up at the clock on the oven, and it was 7:45.
Had your children left the house yet?
So I have to take one to school, and then come back home and take the other one to school.
Gotcha. So it was in between.
Yeah. Yep, that is exactly it.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
We have been very fortunate to have a bus route that has not
Less than 30 to air.
Which is great. And then we walk Langston, which is 3 blocks down the street. So we've been very fortunate in the COVID world to not have a whole lot of logistical challenges that I know people have been.
Yeah, the school bus situation is
facing.
Not great.
Yeah.
You're up.
But Rose would have caught the bus at 6:30 in the morning.
Q.
That's just a little early for my 13-year-old. We're just not gonna be able to make that work.
Elias had a 6:45 bus and to middle school, and it was sometimes I wouldn't see him all day because he would leave before I got up, and then I'd be in meetings when he got home, and I wouldn't get home until after he'd gone to bed. It was bad.
The only problem we have is the backup at school with the drop-off line.
The car lines. Yeah, I've heard horror stories about that too.
If you don't get there early enough, it's bad. So
yeah.
All right, friends. Well, here we are.
We have a quorum.
We finally got a bus to Riverside.
Congrats.
Otherwise, it was an hour and a half of our day between drop-off and pick-off.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are we on the air? Can we hear from our technical staff if we're on the air and ready to go? Well, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and then we'll wait on that. I'm going to call this work session of the Durham City Council to order at 1:00 p.m. on Thursday, September the 23rd. And certainly glad to see all my wonderful colleagues and our fabulous city staff. Welcome everyone who is listening in any way today. And let me ask again from our city staff, are we underway technically? I know that we will hear an answer to that in a moment, so we'll just hang tight.
I can check the YouTube, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking it up right now.
You appear to be streaming on Boxcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're up on YouTube.
Mr. Mayor, is the fact that we're not getting any verbal response from any staff, or are we connected?
You're live.
You are live, and I just checked the YouTube feed. This is John Allure. We can see you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're good now. Thank you all. Again, I want to welcome everyone today. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Here.
Councilmember Caballero?
Here.
Councilmember Freelon?
Here.
Councilmember Freeman?
Present.
Councilmember Middleton?
I am here.
Councilmember Reese?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, we'll now move to announcements by members of the council. Are there colleagues that have any announcements? Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, colleagues. Appreciate your always appreciate being able to get together and do people's business. It's going to be a great afternoon. I'm speaking right now to ask the administration, or I guess ask you, my colleagues, to join me in giving some direction to the administration regarding the long-time homeowner grant program. Full disclosure, I made sure that staff knew that I was going to be talking about this afternoon. We have an outstanding request from the Walltown Community Association to expand the current geographic focus area for the long-time homeowner grant program to include the Walltown community. As you know, the current geographic limitations focus on areas and neighborhoods that had affordable housing investments by the city. Brandon Williams, one of the folks who's deeply involved in the Walltown Community Association, sent us some information relevant to that narrow question and identified a number of city investments in affordable housing in the Walltown community back in June. I know that this is something that the city attorney has looked at. The city manager, our community development director, and the city attorney know my strong views on this subject. And I would just ask at the appropriate time today, I don't want to necessarily hijack the agenda with this right now, but at some point this afternoon, would love to find out what the sense of the council is on asking our staff to expand the program to include Walltown and to allow the application period to be extended to allow those folks to apply. That's the announcement I wanted to make, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember, thank you very much. I feel the appropriate time to take that up is when we talk about the city-county interlocal, and it's very closely related. We're going to do that fairly early in the agenda because our friends from the county tax office and social services are here, and they have a time they need to leave. So we'll be doing that pretty early in the meeting, and I think that will be a good time to do that. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. That sounds great.
Other announcements, colleagues? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow up. I know I shared an email yesterday with my colleagues regarding the support for the decoration of healthy homes, just in light of giving our staff some more time to review the Bull City Tenants United's Tenants Bill of Rights. And so just noting, I pulled this out separately, and I would like to move it forward. And so I just want to make sure that everyone's on board. I haven't had a chance to speak to a couple of colleagues, but I do believe that we were all in support. So just trying to put some pieces in place.
Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Freeman, I appreciate you bringing that resolution to our attention. Glad to receive it yesterday. And I think it looks like a very promising resolution for us. And I think the idea of promoting healthy homes in our community is critically important for all the reasons that are stated in the resolution. I would ask what response you've gotten from our administration, specifically our city manager and our inspections folks, about what it would take for the city to create a voluntary certification program of the type that's described in the resolution.
I actually received I mean, essentially the staff has said, you know, what we come up with, they will make happen, essentially around similar to how we did with the NDO. And so the non-discrimination ordinance. So if there needs to be some adjustments made or staffing added, they would do that. I don't think that would be necessary if it depends on how we want to move forward. And so I think that's what's slowing us down a little bit, to just give our city attorney city attorney's office the chance to look at if there are pieces that are in place in different departments that we could already use, versus really the administration the chance to see if there's pieces of departments that we're already using, and then have conversations with the city attorney. And so I'm just trying to walk alongside of the process so that we do actually get to a point where there's something that on-ramps the tenants and landlords into a same conversation around the Bill of Rights.
Okay, that sounds great. I know that's the conversation that's happening with the Tenants Bill of Rights. I'm speaking specifically about the resolution that you sent us yesterday afternoon about healthy homes. I believe there's a provision in there in which by voting for the resolution, we are calling on the city to explore a voluntary certification program that landlords or tenants could sign up for. That's the specific issue that I was hoping maybe you've checked in with the inspections department, the city manager, to find out if they think that's easy to do, hard to do, they need some time to figure it out. Like what's the reaction been to that?
The honest feedback was they'll make it happen. That was the feedback I got. I did, however, maybe the version 3 needs to be differentiated. That does, because our mayor asked me to remove that one to give us some more time to kind of nail down some details. And so I took that out of the version 3 of it, and so I can. Just making sure that you're seeing that.
Okay.
The version I shared last week is different from the version I shared yesterday.
Okay. I'm now seeing that. Thank you for calling my attention to that, Councilmember. I missed that change.
It's okay.
Probably because I pulled this up in my. Anyway, it's fine.
I know I'm running top speed, so it's okay to slow me down and just ask the question. It's fine.
All right, thank you.
I do think that the staff has been really clear that if it's something that we would like to have implemented, I think it takes us saying that as a council that they would like to have that in place. So I'll look to you all.
Councilmember.
I hope that's helpful.
Councilmember Reese, that met your concerns?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the version, apparently the most recent version doesn't have the sentence I was just a little bit getting heartburn about the voluntary program. Obviously, that may be something we want to roll into the Tenants' Bill of Rights once we've taken a look at what that would require at the local level. But now that the version that I'm reading now just says the city supports initiatives that provide tenant protections, reduce health-related property hazards like carbon monoxide, pests, mold, and lead mold and radon, and that the city will advocate at the federal and state legislatures for adoption of legislation that supports healthy housing and other tenants' rights. Totally on board with that. Absolutely. So I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Colleagues, Councilmember Freeman had originally raised this a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I think 2 work sessions ago, and has now provided us with a final draft. I'm going to suggest that we put this on our agenda, on the consent agenda for next Monday, and ask our staff to go ahead and get on that consent agenda for next Monday. Is that acceptable to you, Councilmember Freeman?
Yes, I think Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Freeman, for this resolution. I think it's really well written and important. I just had one question in the second, whereas the words basic principles of healthful housing are capitalized. And I was wondering if that, like, what is that? Is that a statement from another organization that we're incorporating? And I'd like to read it.
It's actually from the HUD guidelines. And
okay.
I hope I may not have been really clear, but I was sharing the links to the kind of information that was highlighted around the healthy homes from the HUD guidelines that were in place during previous administration.
That's helpful. Thank you. Maybe could we just add HUDs so that it says rooted in the HUD's basic principles of healthful housing, so that people know where that's coming from?
That sounds fine.
Awesome. Thank you. This is really good work. I appreciate it. Look forward to supporting it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, council members. Other announcements? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues, and to everyone watching today. I too look forward to supporting the work that you've led. Councilmember Freeman, thank you so much for it. Mr. Mayor, a year ago, some will remember that I, in conjunction with some other people in the city, intended to launch an initiative called 1,000 Black Men to combat violence in this city and combat some of the situations and circumstances that lead our young people to violence. We know that COVID wreaked havoc with a whole lot of things that we had planned and did not allow us to organize. But in light of recent events, not really recent events, in light of events, period, we feel that we can't wait any longer. So I'd like to officially invite members of this council, this government, this administration, you, Mr. Mayor, and all of you, friends and colleagues, tomorrow at 12 noon on the steps of the historic Hayti Heritage Center in the heart of the historic Hayti community. We will hold a press conference and kickoff of that initiative. And I want to say people should not be confused by the nomenclature, 1,000 Black men. We've been reached out to by folk of goodwill from all walks of life, and we will draw on the resources and expertise and the ingenuity of folk of goodwill, men and women, Black, white, straight, gay, rich, poor, whatever, to bring to bear on this problem. But the nomenclature is rooted in a sense of responsibility for our sons and our nephews and our grandsons and our next door neighbors as well. So we want to invite you tomorrow, the 12 noon, what we will hope will be a sustained, permanent part of the fabric of our city. There's not only two tales about our city, there's two tales, not just within the African-American community, many communities. There are many of us in the African-American community that are doing extremely well, that are extremely well connected, that have an extreme amount of resources that can be brought to bear to help others. And then there are those of us who wallow each night under constant gunfire and have jobs, many times have many pieces of jobs, many jobs, work, but yet still get derided and called lazy or unproductive or not willing to lift themselves up when they work every day. We not only want to converge the tales of the two tales of Durham, but the two tales within our community as well, and do something in addition to what we will ask the government to do. This is not an initiative that will exempt the government from our responsibilities, but to complement and augment what should be going on in City Hall as well. We feel we don't need permission to save our own lives, and that is the animating spirit of this proposition, this initiative. Hope to see folk out tomorrow at 12 noon on the steps of the Hayti Heritage Center as we go forward. Guns down, horns up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member, and thank you for that initiative. It's super important. Thank you so much. Other announcements? All right, colleagues, thank you so much. We will now move to priority items by the City Manager. Madam Manager, welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I do have a few priority items for you this afternoon. Agenda item number 5, which is the purchase of 12 replacement light transit vehicles for GoDurham ACCESS. We are asking City Council to suspend the rules and vote on this item today, as it will allow us to achieve over $20,000 in savings by exercising an existing contract that is set to expire before your council meeting on October 4th. Additionally, agenda item number 13, emergency watershed protection, professional services stream bank stabilization, EWP 2020-01, amendment number 1, attachment number 1 was updated. Agenda item number 14, GoDurham ACCESS Services Overview, a 15-minute presentation. Attachment number 2 has been updated. Agenda item number 19, mandatory weekly COVID-19 testing options. A supplemental item has been added. And agenda item number 20, interlocal agreement for joint funding for the low income homeowners relief program, LIHRP, which is in a supplemental item, has been added, and attachments number 1 and number 2 were updated. That is all I have for you today, Mayor and Council.
Madam Manager, thank you very much. Colleagues, you have heard the manager's priority items, and I'll accept a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Councilmember Freelon, that we approve the manager's priority items. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Attorney, welcome. Are there any priority items today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. It's good to see you all. I do have one priority item this afternoon. As I've communicated with you all, we are rapidly approaching trial, a major trial in the matter of Daryl Howard versus the City of Durham. That is a Middle District federal case. And in light of the approaching trial, I would like to hold a closed session with the council at the conclusion of today's work session, just to bring the council up to date on where we are with the posture of the case and allow you to give some direction to defense counsel as we proceed into trial. So the motion for my request would be to hold a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 for attorney-client consultation for the aforementioned case.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Councilmember Caballero. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, any priority items today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. The City Clerk's office has no priority items this afternoon.
Madam Clerk, thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, we know you have a well-deserved week of vacation coming up, and we are hoping that you will relax and enjoy, and we know that your super capable staff has it under control. So,
Yes, thank you very much. I trust my staff completely, so I think you're in good hands.
thank you. All right, we will now move to the administrative consent items. Item 1 under City Clerk's Office, Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau, Discover Durham reappointment. Item 2, Durham Homeless Services Advisory Committee appointment. Under departmental items, Budget and Management Services Department, City Council salary adjustments, and I'm going to pull that item. Item 4 under Community Development Department, Interlocal Agreement with the Durham Public Schools Board of Education to support promoting academic learning program.
I'd like to pull that.
Okay, item 4. Under item 5, Department of Transportation, purchase of 12 replacement light transit vehicles for GoDurham ACCESS. Can we, so this item is the one that the manager has asked us to suspend the rules today and vote. Is there any discussion before we take that up?
I would just like to just note that this is phenomenal. I think it's great to have the 12 buses added.
All righty, great. I agree. By the way, I did send an email to our transportation director, Sean Egan, about the possibility of purchasing vehicles like this, which were all electric or hybrid. The short version is, and I appreciate his response, there really is nothing in the market now that would be appropriate for this. All right, I'll now accept a motion that we authorize the manager to execute this purchase contract.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
I'm sorry, we have to suspend first. I apologize.
Yeah.
I'll now accept a motion that we suspend the rules and vote.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freelon, seconded by Councilmember Reese, that we suspend the rules and vote on this item. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we'll have a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the purchase contract.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by, I think, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Freelon. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. We'll now continue with the administrative consent items. Under Department of Water Management, item 6, professional engineering services contract for the Hazen and Sawyer PC Tier Quarry Raw Water Storage and Pumping Facilities Project. awesome foresight. I just want to say that. Finance Department, item 7, August 2021 bid report. Fleet Management Department, item 8, cooperative group purchase contract for Sutphen heavy duty fully customized pumpers for the Durham Fire Department. Another exciting purchase. Under General Services Department, item 9, interlocal agreement for a fire and emergency medical services EMS station, amend the 2021-22 capital improvement program, and amend the design build contract for fire and EMS station 18. Under item 10, under that would be item 9. Okay.
Yes, please.
Under item 10, proposal to create a City of Durham Poet Laureate pilot program.
I'd like to pull that, please.
All right, item 10. Under Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, item 11, Durham City County Immigrant Refugee Affairs Interlocal Agreement.
I just
I
have
don't
a
want to
question.
pull it. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I just had a question if it was gonna include in the memo some of the context of the conversation around the Haitian immigrants as well.
Let's go ahead and pull that item then.
Okay.
Thank you. Item 12, Office of Economic and Workforce Development. Item 12, Biotech Training Grant. Under Public Works Department, item 13, Emergency Watershed Protection, EWP, Professional Services Stream Bank Stabilization, EWP 2020-01, Amendment number 1. Under Presentations, Department of Transportation, item 14, GoDurham ACCESS Services Overview. Under the Police Department, item 15, 2021 second quarter crime report. Under Public Hearing, City County Planning Department, item 16, consolidated annexation, courtyards at Doc Nichols. Under Citizens Matters to be heard at 1 o'clock, item 17, Percival Patterson. Under item 18, Tameka Walker. Supplemental items, Human Resources Department, item 19, weekly COVID-19 testing options. I'm going to pull that item. And the City Manager's office, item 20, interlocal agreement for joint funding for the low-income homeowners relief program. And I'm going to pull that item, and we're going to move that up pretty high on our agenda so we can let our friends from the county get back to the work they need to do. Madam Manager, what I have pulled items is 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 19, and 20, and items 14 and 15 for presentation. Is that what you have?
That's what I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. All right, I'm going to do this in this order, friends. We have items 17 and 18, the Citizens Matters, which we'll hear in a moment. And then with your permission, I'm going to move ahead to item 20 so we can get that squared away. And then we'll go back to the pull items and the presentations. Madam Clerk, can we please hear from Percival Patterson? Mr. Patterson, are you available to be heard?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see Mr. Patterson in the queue.
All right. Let's see. You're right. All right, then we'll hear from Ms. Tameka Walker. Is Ms. Walker available to be heard? Ms. Walker, welcome. We're glad to see you. Can you, we are glad to have you, and you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ms. Walker. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Tameka Walker. I'm a GoDurham employee for 11 years. I'm here to speak on safety on the GoDurham buses. We have had several operators assaulted on the bus the last couple of weeks. Ms. Jones, Mr. McGee, Ms. Gibbs, Mr. Saunders, and Ms. Burnett. On September the 19th, 2021, we had no protection on Sunday at Durham Station. 2 individuals came down looking for a passenger on Route 3. The supervisor was on the scene to stop it. They had told the supervisor that they was getting ready to light up the terminal. They noticed that there was no police officers here. Union officials do what they can to be amongst the drivers at night to ensure security. Why do we have to run until 12 a.m. at night and 9 p.m. on Sundays? Triangular Transit stops running at 10 p.m. That's it.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me just say, first of all, it is terrible that you as drivers have had to face this kind of situation. And I just want you to know that we feel very strongly that this should not be happening, that you need protection, and that you need security. We value you extremely highly, and you have got to have the protection that you deserve. I know that the staff has had a memo to respond to with some of the things they're doing, but I would like to hear from staff at this point. I think this is really rises to that level. I would really like to hear from staff about the responses in terms of trying to keep our drivers safe. And I see Mr. Egan here. Mr. Egan, welcome. Can you address these important concerns?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. As described in the memo, GoDurham takes these incidents very seriously, and we're taking clear steps to address safety, particularly for our staff. The GoDurham administration recently met with union leadership to discuss ways to increase the number of new hires and improve operator retention rates. Like many agencies across the region and country, GoDurham is experiencing a significant operator shortage. One of the primary concerns for bus operators is personal safety, and the group discussed ideas for improving operator passenger safety and next steps. One of the key aspects of this also is making sure that we provide competitive compensation for our bus operators. So over the last several months, we've implemented a series of bonuses as well as wage increase and premium pay increase to make our positions more competitive and to retain and attract bus operators. We're also working with the Durham Police Department to decrease onboard incidents and increase patrols in locations where there have been incidents. Right now, we have 4 buses with operator safety barriers that enable the operator to close the barrier and be protected within the operator's seat. We are we have 8 more buses on order. They'll be arriving later this year with those barriers, and we're developing a cost estimate for retrofitting the balance of the fleet so that all of our bus operators have the option of that secure barrier. And we're also looking at different technology approaches to address safety and security concerns for both our operators and our customers to notify security presence where it's needed. Thank you.
Mr. Egan, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We all agree how important this is, and I'm glad that you're taking those actions. I'm glad to hear about the safety barriers and the increased patrols. And of course, we all know what a shortage we have across this entire region. And I know the folks in the region are working together in terms of trying to get more bus drivers on all of our systems. So thank you very much for that.
Mr. Mayor, might I ask Director Egan a question?
Sure.
So if you can reappear. Hey man, how are you? Good to see you. I've heard from a number of people in the community, including some operators. And I guess, is it your sense that this proliferation of late of attacks on our operators, both physical and even verbal confrontations, my understanding that this is anecdotal, that it hasn't been associated to like enforcing mask mandates or anything like this, that something else is going on. Have you gotten a sense of why of late there seems to be an increase in these type of incidents?
I don't think there's any one factor that we can point to. We know that there's a great deal of stress and strain in our community amidst the pandemic, and that has certainly played a role, but I don't think there's any single factor that we can, such as masks, that we can attribute this to. And so we're continuing to work to make sure that we provide our operators training on how to de-escalate, for example, where there might be a conflict. We think that there's more that we can do in terms of customer service, training, and then some of those security measures for those situations that where the de-escalation is not possible.
Ms. Walker in her comments alluded to someone saying one of the purported, I'm assuming, attackers saying that they're gonna light the terminal up. Do you know what that means?
I believe it's a reference to gunfire.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Egan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, council member. Before I get to other council members, I'm going to ask Ms. Walker if she has any final comments.
Yes. I do have Percival Patterson with me, and he do want to speak. Can he speak, please?
Yes, he can. Yes, he can, Ms. Walker. Mr. Patterson, welcome. We're glad to have you. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. First of all, I must say good afternoon. My name is Percival Patterson. I've been an employee for the last 23 years, and I have never seen it like this. For the past 6 months, there's a lot of assault go up. And at one point, we have an operator that defended himself, and he got terminated for that reason. I wonder, what can we do to solve these issues? Today I was on Route 3, and I was on bus, I think it's 2102, and we have one of those cages out there. And a young lady says that why they put these cages on these buses, because it don't stop anybody. So, you know, we ask that we have somebody in law enforcement to ride these buses so that our operator can be safe. I've been to several other cities, like I use Richmond, Virginia, as for instance, and the operator don't even have to say anything. They have security riding those buses back and forth, you know, and a lot of times I speak with management. They didn't have a solution for me. And that's the reason why I come to you, because we badly need help. Thank you so much.
Mr. Patterson, thank you. You and I have met before about other issues, and I know of your long service to our community, and I want to thank you for that. And I want to tell you that we take very seriously what you're saying, and I want to appreciate you and Ms. Walker. Thank you for being here. Councilmember Freeman and then Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just noting that I was going to ask Ms. Waller as well. You ask her for the follow-up.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to bring up a couple of things that were brought up in the conversation that Councilmember Reese and I had with Ms. Walker and Mr. Patterson last week about this issue. And Councilmember Middleton had asked about mask enforcement. They did mention that mask enforcement has been an issue leading to conflicts. I don't know if it's led to any assaults, but that there were people on the buses who would become upset when the operators asked them to wear their mask or wear their masks properly. And another thing I think we need to think about is, you know, a lot of these issues have arisen after we made the buses free. There are people who don't really have anything to do and are getting on the buses and just riding around. And so, you know, one of the unintended consequences of free buses, which I think is a fabulous policy choice and one that we should continue to pursue, is that it's increased the number of people who are using the buses who aren't using the bus to go anywhere in particular, or using the bus to just, you know, hang out, and that's creating more opportunities for conflicts as well. I'm looking forward to seeing the advice of the administration. Oh, one of the other things that was brought up was that there was previously private security. I don't know at what point that ended, but at one point there was a private security operator who was stationed at the bus station and on the buses. And the folks mentioned that had been helpful in diffusing and preventing some of the conflicts. So I just want to thank the administration for being proactive in finding solutions to this. We, of course, want all of the staff for the city and our operators, our contractors, to be safe, just because that's incredibly important. But we're also facing a major shortage of bus drivers. And these are the kind of working conditions that I would not expect anyone to subject themselves to. And so it's important for a lot of reasons that we figure out the situation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate those comments. Colleagues, anything else before we move on? I just want to say again to Ms. Walker and Mr. Patterson and to the other drivers that we take this very seriously. And I appreciate the comments of my colleagues and also Mr. Egan's response. I know that he takes it very seriously, as do all of our transportation and our city staff. And we need to do everything we can to make sure that you are in a safe situation. So please continue to be in touch with us about it. Thank you for being here. Councilmember Freeman.
I was just going to ask if Mr. Egan could give a follow-up on whether or not the cages was the best solution, because I'm understanding that there's probably holes and gaps in that cage. And so just making sure that if it's possible to find something a little bit more secure or what have you.
So we think that the barriers are part of the solution, but there are other tools such as better coordination with law enforcement and better training on issues like how to de-escalate conflict. So we don't think that the operator barriers are going to completely solve this. We think it needs to be one piece of a more comprehensive solution, but we do think that it's an important part of that solution.
Just a follow-up, when you say the de-escalation, I'm assuming that's a training that the bus drivers would be going through?
That's correct.
Is there an internal person conducting these trainings, or is this an external request? Like,
we use a mix of internal staff training resources as well as external. So all of our bus operators undergo customer service training that includes conflict de-escalation as a portion of it. So that's a standard part of our training program.
And then just the one piece where the person was, I guess, terminated for defending themselves. Is there any process in place to kind of evaluate based on the current situation and the bus shortage or bus driver shortage, I should say?
I can't speak to a specific personnel matter, but there are grievance procedures in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate, Mr. Egan, I think your earlier comment that there are a number of factors that could be feeding into this. I do want to, I do want to say, and the Mayor Pro Tem, I was not suggesting this. I want to be very clear. The Mayor Pro Tem wasn't saying this and wasn't even implicating it, I believe. But I do want to be clear because I don't want anybody to make assume a connection between price points and the ability of a price point to siphon out criminality or siphon out bad things happening. There are some that would suggest that when a neighborhood reaches a certain price point, it'll keep certain things out of it. And we know that's not the case all the time. And I know all of us want to keep the buses free. I don't know that because the buses are free that folk with nothing to do are necessarily the ones perpetrating these acts. Quite honestly, many times, a lot of our young brothers and sisters that are caught up in this lifestyle have a whole lot of disposable income. It comes with the life, if you will. And it's not taxed, it's not on the record, but a price point for many of these young people, particularly a price point that we charge for our buses is not really a barrier to undesirable type activity. And again, my sister wasn't suggesting this, but I just want to make sure nobody watching it even gets that message. We all know that free buses are a good thing and we want them to be free. I don't know that people with idle hands or with nothing to do are just getting on and fighting drivers or shooting up buses. We don't know, but we do know that the buses are important. It's an important lifeline. Most of the people that ride them are Black and brown and poor daily. So for everybody out there, consider this a commercial for our buses. If you want to help us destigmatize, leave the car at home sometimes and jump on the bus. I know Councilor Reese does from time to time, and help us broaden the usage of the bus system. But I do want to say that I don't think a price point is the issue. And I'm not suggesting anybody said that, but I don't want that implication to be out there or anyone to think that we're in any way suggesting that might be an accelerant to this type of activity. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Egan. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, colleagues, we'll now move on to item 20. And this item is the interlocal agreement for joint funding for the low-income homeowners relief program. And I see Deputy City Manager Bertha Johnson is with us. Welcome, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, Bertha Johnson, Deputy City Manager. I'm happy to answer any questions about this item. As you mentioned earlier, Mayor, we have on the call today Ben Rose, Durham County Social Services, and Dwayne Brinson, Durham County Tax Administrator, and other Durham County staff members to answer questions about the program.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. And we'll take up the city program questions that Councilmember Reese asked after we take these questions. So colleagues, any questions about this interlocal or any concerns that you would like to raise about the interlocal? This is a consent item, but we did pull it so we could discuss the city item. All right, Ms. Johnson, I don't see any questions or concerns from members of the council, so thank you. And I want to thank, I believe, Mr. Brinson and Ben Rose were both here, and maybe others from the county, and want to thank them, but they are officially released. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we'll now take up the question that Councilmember Reese was raising related to the city's program that is separate from this joint city-county program that we have just talked about the interlocal for. Councilmember Reese, would you like to address this?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Appreciate, again, creating some space for us to talk about this here. It's my belief that a majority of the council will support expanding the long-time homeowner grant program to include Walltown on the basis that I discussed during announcements. And then this is really just an opportunity for us to provide that guidance to staff and ask them to take the steps necessary to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Could you talk a little bit more? And I know you have provided some information and you've mentioned already some information that we've received from Mr. Williams. Can you talk a little bit more about the basis for this request?
Sure. As all of us know, when this program was first created for reasons related to making sure that the program had sufficient legal support, the city attorney at that time recommended that we limit the geographic area of applicability of the program to 3 areas where the city had made investments in affordable housing. The logic there was that because the city had made those investments, it would not be reasonable, or it would be more reasonable in those places for the city to have the legal authority to provide this kind of grant support to long-term homeowners. The rationale being we would not have provided affordable housing investments only to see the neighborhood become unaffordable due to increased property tax bills for long-time homeowners. And so that was the justification for it. And in June, as we were having conversations together as a council about whether or not the geographically limited program should be expanded to a citywide program, Brandon Williams from the Walltown Community Association sent all of us an email in which he identified a number of key investments in affordable housing made by the city and the Walltown community. I provided that to the city attorney and to our community development department for their review. And it's my hope that those investments made by the city form enough of a legal basis for us to extend this program to the Walltown community. Of course, the broader answer is the program that we just had the opportunity to ask questions about, didn't. The better answer is for our county partners to work with us to expand eligibility for that program to increase the median income eligibility from 30% to 60% of area median income, and to at least double the maximum grant from $750 per year to $1,500 a year. But that is work that we are pursuing in parallel to the rollout of the initial program from the county. So this is really a stopgap measure designed to provide a very modest level of property tax support to a community where the city has made these investments in affordable housing in the past. I would also add that that Brandon Williams also provided to us, I guess maybe it was last week or perhaps late the week before, an analysis bolstered by data from DataWorks NC here in Durham that provided a very rough cost estimate for the number of homeowners who might be eligible for the very limited grant support that the city provides under our program. And the dollar cost was extremely modest, somewhere in the neighborhood of $27,000. And obviously the administrative burden of expanding the program is something that we, by making this decision, would ask our staff to take on. In addition to expanding the eligibility, we would also need to expand the period of time in which applications could be accepted to allow Walltown homeowners who qualify to submit applications. We'd also have to come up with some kind of plan for community outreach to make folks in Walltown understand that the program is now available to them. I offered the folks at the Walltown Community Association, when I sat down with them yesterday, offered to make myself available, and I know a number of my colleagues will want to pitch in as well to work with the Walltown Community Association, even if it just means going door to door or having tabling events in the neighborhood to make longtime homeowners aware that this program hopefully is now open to them and help them get their applications in before the deadline. I think that's the information that I had to share with my colleagues. Again, for a very modest cost and with the legal justification that we need, thanks to Brandon Williams doing the unpaid labor of doing that research for us. I think this is a fairly straightforward measure that we can ask our staff to take. That's what I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Colleagues, I'll go first. I agree with Councilmember Reese. I believe that the justification is there from the city investments. And I really am very sympathetic to our staff's, our legal staff's concerns that we have the appropriate legal justification. And I believe that we do in this case. I think that it is, I agree that we should add this, and I'm going to suggest a course of action after we have some more discussion. Colleagues, discussion. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also agree, and I am faithfully aware of how nothing is ever a mistake, and so I'm grateful that Councilmember Reese was able to sit down with Walltown yesterday and to get to that point of being able to deliver this message today. I think there's no better representative to kind of deliver that. And so I'm sure that as we go through the rest of this discussion, I'm looking forward to hearing what my other colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to also say that I think I agree that we should add Walltown to the program. I appreciate the work of our legal staff to ensure that we have the right legal basis for moving forward with an additional community. And I'm continue to be hopeful that we'll be able to move forward with a citywide or countywide program in the future, but that providing some immediate tax relief to this community in the short term makes sense. And want to thank Councilmember Reese for continuing to advocate and work on this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to all the Walltown folks who've been advocating for this issue. Brandon and others have been emailing us pretty consistently. I want to thank my council member colleague, Councilmember Reese, for meeting with them yesterday. I also agree. I know we talked about the interlocal agreement, and I'm just leaning into our colleagues. I think all of us are really hoping that the countywide program will be expanded to 60% AMI and that the money will increase. And I'm supportive of that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freelon.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just echoing the sentiments of my colleagues that have already spoken. Sorry if there's a leaf blower outside of my window. I just had a question about looking to expand this. Walltown, I think it's a great start, but there are other, neighborhoods and communities from this would obviously benefit. And if we are going to, look at this reinterpretation, I'd be curious to see how far we could take that. In the short term, I think this is a great start, and I would be anxious to keep growing. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and let me echo my thanks to Councilmember Reese, who's really done a person's job in this issue and leaning in, and I'm going to thank him for his constant leaning in on it. Listen, I think it's a good first step. I believe that ultimately, as a city, we should be looking, as I've said, at Marshall Plan type investment in these type of communities. And the race isn't always to the swift nor the battle to the strong, but the one that endures. And this is a good, I think, small. And by small, I don't mean insignificant. I mean in terms of the overall universe of work that needs to be done. But it's a critical step. And I hope that this provides momentum to the type of revolutionary and paradigm shifting investment in these legacy communities that I believe we need as a city. So thank you for the work, and I'll certainly support it.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I do want to remind us that we have already let the County Commission know that we, as a council, are supportive of moving the joint city-county program, citywide program, countywide program now, to being to raising the AMI to 60% and to raising the top limit of the potential award. So we've let them know, and you all will recall that I think about a month ago I appointed a council member, Reese and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, to a committee to talk to them about it. I took the opportunity recently when we happened to be together at a press conference about Afghanistan with County Commission Chair Howerton to talk to her about it. And so they know of our interest, and I've asked her to and let her know of our committee and ask her if there are folks from the county who would like to talk to us about it. So we're trying to push that ahead and get, because I think you're absolutely right. All of you all are talking about the expansion. No question, that's critically important. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I just had a question if it would be deemed similar in the case for Bragtown, considering that the city actually implemented bike lanes on a road in the area recently, and that funding would have come from essentially, the city. And so that would be a city investment in that area. And so if they could also be included, that would be a great way to move both of the cities or the communities that have been requesting this for the last couple of years forward.
I think that the difference in the investment is that this is a residential investment, and that has been the legal hook on which we've been hanging our hat. Colleagues, I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask for, I think we've got thumbs up. I think we've got 7 thumbs up. We might as well do it again for including Walltown. And then asking our staff to bring us back something in 2 weeks that will help us codify that. I guess, Mr. Johnson, are you with us, and perhaps the city attorney?
Yes, I'm here. Greetings, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. The Community Development Department stands ready to implement a program that is approved by the council, the city attorney, and the city manager's office.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We appreciate you. I know you'll be working closely with the city attorney's office, and thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, as soon as we have some information to share with the residents, I'll be calling each of you individually to come out with me and knock some doors down in Walltown to let folk know this is coming, this money's there, they can come get it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And colleagues, thank you very, very much for today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Council Member. I would like to clarify one other aspect of our city plan. And if Mr. Johnson, could you come back onto the camera? Thank you. It's my understanding from all of our discussions and the council's previous discussions that we are extending the program, paying in 2021 the retroactive taxes for 2020. Is that?
So the program that we're working on, as I've shared with council previously, we're reviewing 2019 right now.
Yep.
We have not opened 2020 as of yet.
Is it our intention to open 2020?
Yes, if it's a council. Remember, we had a conversation that this was a pilot, and we had your council had asked us to extend it. It was a 3-year pilot. We were asked to extend it for another year, and then I would assume that you're asking to extend it for another year.
Yes, just want to make sure we're all clear on that. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Colleagues, thank you. We took a little detour. I want to thank the staff for hanging in there with us, but I think it's one that we all feel is important. So thank you very much. We're now going to get back to take these things in order. We will start with item 3. Item 3 is the city county salary adjustments. We have one person that'd like to be heard on this item, Jacqueline Wagstaff. Madam Clerk, could you please make Ms. Wagstaff available to be heard? And Ms. Wagstaff, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Wagstaff.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Always a pleasure. But I wanted to speak on this item because I was looking at the city charter as it relates to compensation for council members. I think this is something that needs to be held until the public can have ample input on this issue. That the taxpayers need to be, because you have to remember, serving on council, people didn't come on council to make it a job. People serve on council because I guess they assume they want to be public servants. And Durham's council charter has never been one that allowed for full-time council members. It's always been a part-time situation with stipends that were given by the taxpayers, because in essence, the council members are the employees of the taxpayers. So the taxpayers should have some say-so in this about this, because I remember during the budget cycle this year, I remember Councilwoman Caballero mentioning that she couldn't continue this work with this little bit of pay, and that I think what she had initiated was about 80 grand would be a comparable amount to what councils need to be paid to be on council. Well, if that was the case, then most people need to understand running for council is not something you run for because you intend to get rich. It's something you run for because you want to serve the people. And I think that this issue about increasing the pay, I know there's probably a cost of living increase that happens each year. I think there's some 3%, but when I was looking at the charter, I couldn't quite find the section, and I'll find it eventually, hopefully by the time this becomes a public comment or a public hearing, so that taxpayers will have some input on whether or not they would like to see this council move to a full-time position. And I'm pretty sure that y'all will try to move this along through the minimum wage process, but that's not fair to the taxpayers to move this along to get what you're seeking to get. This should be something that the taxpayers make the decision on, since technically elected officials are the employees of the taxpayers. And I think the taxpayers should have ample input on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Wagstaff. All right, colleagues, we'll now hear from our city staff on this item. And I believe I saw Ms. Reardon and Mr. Allure. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, myself, John Allure, Acting Budget Director, and Christina Reardon, Acting Assistant Director, who prepared the item, are here to available to answer any of your questions this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allure. Colleagues, you have read the memo, and I'm interested in any comments that you may have. Anybody like to start us off? Councilmember Freelon and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure. Yeah, just a brief comment to remind folks who are listening, watching, may not have been present when we discussed this several months ago, that I brought this forward initially because you know, the lived reality of the service, and I don't know if it's how long it's been this way, but the hours that go into this work often exceed you know, full-time work between the dozen boards that we sit on, the meetings, work sessions, public appearances, research, and other tasks. And for me, I think in the budget request document that I submitted about this, it was really an equity issue about having the privilege to be able to take off work to meet the requirements to be able to serve. So I don't know if it would be advantageous or useful for us to look at this through an equity lens, but if the service requirement requires you to have that kind of disposable income and time, then the intent of the charter may not meet the spirit of the call to service. We want people from all types of backgrounds to be able to serve the city of Durham. And what we have currently is a class prohibitive barrier, in my opinion, for inclusion and service on city council, which should be eliminated. So I just wanted to provide that kind of context for why I was bringing this up, and just a reminder to those who are listening and watching that I won't personally benefit from this at all. I'm stepping down from council in December, and so, but I want to make sure that whoever comes in next doesn't make that decision based on their income and their ability to manage a full-time or part-time job alongside the service that the city needs from a diverse array of voices. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Totally agree with Councilmember Freelon about the equity concerns. We also had a legal conversation previously about whether we were able to, at this point, assign, like set the date of the raises to be after everyone had gone through an election. And it's my understanding that our city attorney has found that that is not possible, that we cannot commit a future council to taking this action, that if we want it to happen, we have to do it ourselves. And I just wanted to confirm, I wanted to make that clear to the public and also confirm my understanding that we have to, as this council, make this choice for it to take effect for everyone at the same time, and that we can't we can't choose a future date where a future council would be obligated by that decision.
Madam Attorney, would you like to confirm or deny that?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem has our assessment exactly right. So the city council does not have the authority to bind a future council in subsequent budget years with compensation decisions that are made now.
Thank you. So if we want to raise the pay, we have to do it.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, colleagues, other comments? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you so much, colleagues. And I thank you, Pearson Jillian, for your comments. Just so I'm clear, so Attorney Rayberg, just a question. If we pass a raise and put an effective date on it, so are we saying that if we, or an ordinance or whatever we do, and we put a date on it, when a new council comes in, if that ordinance or whatever was duly passed, wouldn't the remedy for that new council be to go through procedures to undo it? And if they choose not to undo it, does it not carry the force of law with it?
I'm not sure I'm following you, Councilmember Middleton. So I actually just shared a statute with all of you. So General Statute 168-64 does authorize council to fix its own compensation. The compensation of the mayor and all council members by adoption of the annual budget ordinance. And of course you can, if you do that at some point during a budget year, you would just amend the budget to account for those compensation changes. But what you can't do is say for the 2023 budget year, we're going to authorize, this council is going to authorize compensation in the amount of X, right? Because this council is in you pass a budget from year to year, if that makes sense.
Right.
And the composition of the council may be completely different for a future budget year. And that's a legislative action that council is entitled to take then in that budget year.
But aren't part of the actions that they're able to take is legislatively to undo any ordinance that existed prior to their being impaneled. I mean, we as an institution, we make changes and make decisions for the institution, not us personally, but for the seats in the institution all the time that accrue and carry on to future generations. And so I guess I'm wondering is the question that, are we not allowed to put specific dates of an action? Does that accrue to ordinances as well? I mean, if we take an action and say that this action takes effect at a date certain, sometime in the future, isn't it within the purview of whatever council is seated at that time to legally undo it, rather than say, oh, we're burdened by? I mean, if they don't take any action, it's the law, isn't it? It's binding if we went through process and it was duly passed. Is that not the case?
If they don't take any action, it's just an enforced ordinance. I mean, that's true of any legislative action that the council takes, right? So you all could adopt an ordinance that a future council doesn't necessarily agree with or like, and they could take action to repeal that ordinance or modify that ordinance in some way. That's true.
Right.
It's from a budgetary standpoint, however, we do recommend, and generally it's the case, that a current council cannot legally bind future councils to fiscal decisions.
Recommend. So if
and my understanding of the law is that you can't fiscally bind a future council to meet a financial commitment that is made by this council. Right. Could they ratify it? Absolutely, yes.
Right. I think that's just an interesting way to frame it, as binding them to a decision. If we as an institution decide that the salary for this institution institutionally is X, and that salary will take effect at a date, and we legally pass that, I mean, if folk want to challenge it, you know, the legality of it, then that's fine. But I guess I'm just curious as to how is that different if we go through all of the due process and the correct legal machinations to pass something as a duly sat and impaneled council, then we're not denying any future council any remedy or relief to if they say, hey, we don't want this money. We're not denying that, but what preclude, and I'm glad you said recommended. So is there anything is there a red line that precludes us from making a decision for this institution and putting a date certain on that decision as to when it goes into effect? Is there a red line that precludes us from doing that?
I think the red line is probably in the budgetary statutes, and I would need, more time to kind of look at the general statutes that govern municipalities' budgeting process and maybe talk to the budgeting staff, and maybe they know off the top of their heads. But I don't think you can budget in this year for things that will not happen, in the budget year for which you are legislating right now, if that makes sense.
It does, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate the legwork you'll do on that. I'll thank you so much, Councilor. I appreciate that. So
Sure.
What I say, colleagues, if I might, Mr. Mayor, is it's after 4 years of doing this job, it is abundantly clear to me that were my life not such as it is, there's no way I could do this job. I know people that are far more capable than me and far smarter than I am that could not do this job because of the way their life is configured, because of the money that they make, because of the nature of their life. And that troubles me from an equity point of view, that the most influential people in the organization, and this is paradoxical, are the least paid people in the organization. By definition, and there might be some good to that, but the question then becomes, how then does a person sit in these seats of influence who can't afford to do it? How then do they ever get the opportunity to influence the organization or influence outcome? Whatever system we have, whether it's council manager or a strong mayor, ward, in name or true ward system, running for office takes money, and I don't know, what folks' perception of the job is, but in the city of 300,000 people, $500 million budget each year, you're calling it part-time. Listen, I could do the job part-time, but I'd be dialing it in. I'd be dialing it in. I'd be constantly just deferring to the staff on everything. I'd be rubber stamping stuff. There's no way I'm going to read all the stuff we need to read to make intelligent and informed decisions. And I'd be dialing it in, collecting a check to dial it in. And I don't think that's what is good for our democracy or was healthy for us. So I asked the questions to Councilor Rayberg about, the ability to kind of date certain things, because I think we should be in peril. I think if we do this, that voters should have the right to fire us for this decision if we decide to make this decision. I'm perfectly fine with, and I don't even know if I'm going to be here the next cycle, but whoever is going to be here from an institutional point of view, my desire is that when my season is over, that somebody will be able to say, well, he did something good. He left it in better shape than he found it, or we did collectively some things that are good and that will accrue to posterity good. And one of those things, if we can make this seat and this office more accessible to folk who are oftentimes far more capable, but just don't have the life configuration to do it. I don't know what the answer is when folk say to me, I'd like to be on the city council, but I can't afford to do it. I don't know what to say. Get a better job. I'm the boss at my job. Go be the boss at your job. Configure your life in a way where your income will put you in a position where you can do this kind of work. I don't know what the answer to that is. And I do know that whatever the salary increase is, it's not going to catapult you into the 1%. It might not even make you middle class by standards. But I know that for many people, it will make a profound difference as to whether or not they're able to do this job. And for many folk, it would be a significant change from an income point of view, from a benefits point of view. And I want more people to have the option, like I have, and I have had, of saying, yeah, I can do that. I can make that work because of my life, because of my income, because of whatever, make that happen. So what that looks like, you know, I don't know, but I do know that were my life not as it is, I wouldn't be able to do the job. It's plain and simple. And I don't want a whole bunch of folk having to do that calculus and coming up with the answer. I can't step forward and serve with all of my ingenuity and creativity and passion and vision for the city because they don't pay a living wage to do it. So I look forward to comments from my colleagues, and that's all I'll say at this juncture. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Allure?
Yes, I just wanted to make a point of clarification for everyone that I think would be helpful about the budget. Budgetarily, the FY22 budget was already set up to move employees from part-time to full-time. That's why we put the money aside in a non-departmental account. And then in terms of what the annual budget is, it's kind of like the baby new year. We start with a new budget every year. It has a life cycle. And at the end of that 12 months, that budget, that new year dies to be replaced by a new baby new year. And it cycles over and over again that way. And I believe Councilmember Middleton is quite right. It would take someone to undo it. Just as you roll every year as part-time employees, it would take somebody within a budget process cycle to undo that, to change that. That is my understanding. So if you moved it to full-time, somebody in the future would need to undo that in the budget process.
I think one question that I understood to be an important one, Mr. Allure, is could we, it's pretty clear from what you're saying about us taking the steps now. Could we take an action today that said, for example, I'm picking an arbitrary time, that the pay increases would begin, let's just say, in the FY24 budget?
No.
All right.
Annual budget process.
Right, and so that's what I was thinking that Attorney Rayberg was also referring to, and that the Mayor Pro Tem was pointing out. I think that the distinction is that, as Councilmember Middleton has been saying, we could raise it in this budget year and it would continue into any other budget year, and then any council can change its mind at any time.
Correct.
But we can't begin a process. We can't put something in the budget now that would make those raises happen in a future year outside of this budget cycle. Is that right?
You're correct. And for a like example, think of the CIP. Future CIPs are planned, but they need to be adopted in the year in which the plan comes forward.
Okay. To me, that's a helpful clarification, and I hope it is to you all, colleagues. Councilmember Reese, I think you're next, and then we'll go to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Freelon and John and Mayor Pro Tem, for laying out the case for increasing council salaries, I should say council pay, by about $10,000 per council member to somewhere in the neighborhood of $37,000-ish. Is that, do I have that about right, Mr. Allure? Excluding the mayor, who's slightly higher. You're muted. Sorry.
For council members going from 25 to 35,000 about, and for the mayor going from 29,000 to about 42,000.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So the first thing I wanted to say is nobody is going to be enriching themselves to a great extent on $35,200 a year. The difference is about $10,000 before taxes. So, you know, this is not, no one's talking about, no one on this council has ever said council members ought to be paid anywhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 a year. What I have heard people say is we should be making at least Durham's minimum livable wage, as is included in our city ordinance, as calculated for a full-time employee. And there's a lot of there are a lot of good reasons to do that for all the reasons that Councilmember Johnson, so Mayor Pro Tem Johnson and Councilmember Phelan said. I think one of the things we have to wrestle with, and I'll be clear, I don't know how I feel about this yet. I'm deeply conflicted. One of the things we have to wrestle with is, Councilmember Middleton is exactly right. You have to have your life set up a certain way in order to work a full-time job and serve on the Durham City Council in the way that all of us do it and believe it ought to be done. Your life has to be set up a certain way, and not everyone is like that. My life was not set up that way, and I lead one of the most privileged existences that you could possibly imagine. But you couldn't hire enough childcare to make it work when I was working a full-time job, and so I don't anymore, and that's the way it is, and that's fine for our family. But the vast majority of people in the city couldn't afford to do that. And so the limiting the council pay in the way that we do artificially excludes a number of very qualified, supremely qualified individuals who could otherwise do an excellent job of serving on the city council. The other piece I want to make sure we understand is that if we did this, it would not automatically mean that folks of limited means would find it easier to be elected to this body. They would find it easier to serve on an ongoing basis. But getting elected to the Durham City Council is also hella expensive. Not just the money you have to have personally, the money you have to raise from people, the likelihood that you're able to raise enough money to compete, but also the time that it takes to run for office. And those things also artificially circumscribe the population of people who can successfully contest for elected office in the city. And those are factors that I think are largely outside the control of the council. We could, in another world together, sit down and envision a system of electing city council members that largely addressed many of those inequities. But we can't do that. And so this is a thing we can do, and maybe we should. But there are two things that, to me, make it difficult to think about voting for even this very, very modest increase in salary for council members. The first is, we all knew what we were getting into when we signed up to run for this gig, or in one case, applied for the vacancy. We all knew what the salary was. We knew that we were going to have to make it work if we were successfully elected or appointed. We knew that. And so it seems challenging to say now, oh, well, I think I get paid more. Now, I know the thing is, we want to try to make the job itself doable for folks who don't make a ton of money, but that's the practical effect today. The second issue is perhaps more compelling, which is, it's difficult for me to legitimately and honestly look the people of Durham in the eye and say, this is the very best way to spend an extra $78,000. Yes, it has all the benefits that have been described. And yes, it could very well be a good idea. But it seems to me that when we look at making budget choices, I always find it very hard to understand how this is the best way to spend this $78,000. And I'm undecided, I'm torn, I don't know what to do, but those are my thoughts. But I want to make this job easier to do for folks, and this is a way to do that. So it is compelling to me on that basis. But the other two things I'm going to have to reconcile myself to before I support it. That's what I had to say about it. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, council member. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure folks know one of the charts in our memo that lists the salary and benefits of our peer cities, that Raleigh is also considering an increase. I think we may have mentioned it last time, but I have the numbers that they are thinking about increasing their mayoral salary to $45,911 and council to $37,248. So Raleigh and Charlotte have both raised their salaries to comparable numbers to what we are, to what we're considering over, I think, just the last year.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I did send that Raleigh report around to all of you all colleagues. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. And I appreciate Councilmember Reese kind of highlighting, I guess, some of my concerns as well around how to budgetarily spend that kind of money. I'm just trying to be mindful. I know we skipped a step in a couple cycles, and I just want to make sure I know where we are. And I was just going to ask staff if they could clarify for me where we were with our city staff and our step process.
So okay, here comes the manager. Okay, great.
So just to be clear that I understand, could you please, are you talking about a public safety survey, salary survey? Is that?
I'm talking about all of the salary adjustments that we were doing from the salary study we did a few years ago, and just kind of like where we are in our steps, because I know we missed at least one or two.
So I think I understand what you're asking now. So as has been spoken here about, once a budget is approved and we start a new year, the decisions that are made around that budget, whether it is skipping a raise or whatever happens, it is somewhat of a final decision that has been made and approved. One of the ways that we try to make amends, if you will, for any skipped steps or skipped raises that were made necessary because of either financial conditions or just decisions that were made, is to continuously do market increases so that we move our plans so that the employees that we have are actually making market salaries regardless of whether or not there was a step or not a step given. So we do have plans to re-implement our step plan this year. So we certainly do have plans to do that. And we are also doing some additional work on market movement. We did move some of our pay plans a few percentage points this budget year. We did not last budget year, but we did this budget year. And we plan to continue to look, particularly in our public safety areas, which were the oldest market studies that we had, had on record. And we did make some movement, but we know we need to look at those additionally. So we are doing some work this year, but that would not necessarily include going back and like adding 2 steps or anything of that nature. We would start where we are and then, try to make sure that our pay plans reflect market for the jobs that we have here. I hope that is responsive to.
That's helpful. I think what I'm understanding is that we have had to skip a couple of steps, and mindful that the raises that have been skipped for our staff in and of themselves aren't the same amount. I'm more inclined to access to be focused on our city staff who are working full-time or part-time, rather than council. And so I'm also mindful that the salary doesn't actually make it as equitable as it was stated. And there's a lot of pieces to this conversation that are still missing. So I'm on the fence. I'm leaning in the, like, I'm just not supportive right now, but I'm listening. And I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate the discussion and my input from my colleagues. And I amen to everything Councilor Reese said about the conflict. I would suggest, however, that he's right. I did know what I was getting into, and that's precisely the moment when folk are excluded or included. That's the starting point of the conversation. I knew what the salary was and said, I can swing it. That's precisely the point when folks look at it and say, I can't do that at that point. So that's where the on-ramp or the off-ramp is, depending on how you look at it, into service is. That is precisely the first data point. I had no idea I knew what I was getting into in terms of salary, but in terms of the workload, what it takes to efficiently do it. And I will be very straightforward. It is very possible to do this job and just totally defer to staff. If you want to read minimally and not go to board meetings and collect the stipend and show up at council meetings and pretend you know what you're talking about and just sit there and just cast votes, based upon whatever the prevailing wind is, quite possible to do that. I think that the city deserves more. And so I resonate with everything that Councilor Reese says. The thing though that I have to do sometimes we all do as a leader is you have to separate yourself personally from the institution and separate yourself personally from the chair. If I think about this as giving Mark Anthony a raise, it's a non-starter. If I see myself personally as the embodiment of the chair, if I see me as the sum total of the institution, and by the way, nobody wants me making decisions like that, by the way, but if I look at it that way, then yeah, this is a non-starter. But I think if we look at ourselves as seasonal help, as finite points, and look at the institution more universally, I'm not thinking, which is why I am perfectly comfortable with, if we raise this, putting it at a point where I wouldn't even benefit from it, or giving the folk an opportunity to fire me for doing it. But with all the things that are challenging, what is most challenging to me are the conversations I've had with people who are brilliant, who are committed, who are passionate, who love this city, who will never be able to do this job. That's what's most pressing on me. And how do we undo that? And raising salary, listen, that's not going to be a panacea. That's certainly, it's multifaceted. There's a bunch of things that need to happen, from election finance, campaign finance reform, into all that kind of stuff. But right now I'm in this seat, and what can I do, or what steps can I take to make it more likely for more people to participate than not? Because as of now, it's clear to me that we can throw around all of the Democratic cliches we throw around, and access and stuff all we want. The bottom line is there's a whole bunch of people who will never be able to sit in this office as a visitor, but not as a council person, because of so many class, economic barriers that preclude them from it. That bothers me as well. If I take me out of it, I'm not voting for me to get a raise. I think about the institution. The other thing a leader has to do is, some people are not going to believe you. They're going to say, no, this is about you. And you have to decide what price you're willing to pay, and you got to be willing to get fired for it. That's part of leadership too. But I think that I know that there's a whole bunch of people that just simply can't be in this space as things are now. And that bothers me as well, in addition to all of the other excellent points that my colleagues have raised about doing it. So that's a long way of saying I don't know yet either. So the saga continues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Hey, Councilmember Caballero, and then I'll make a comment.
Thank you. I appreciate all of my colleagues' robust comments. I am willing to wait on this issue, willing to support it. I think what we're basically pushing forward is a living wage, something that we have made a broad commitment to as an institution for both our full-time and part-time employees, and we are employees. At the end of the day, we qualify for benefits. We are baked into the formula every year of cost of living percentages, and there's a reason for that. And so I think that yes, the argument for, I can think of lots of ways we could spend $78,000. That's true for many of the things that we put forward. Again, willing to listen more. I think it's interesting that both Charlotte and Raleigh have moved this way. There are plenty of cities all over this country that you can't work when you're a council member. You are a full-time, the expectation is you are full-time serving the community. And you are barred from working elsewhere other than as a council member. Obviously the pay is commensurate to that, but that is a model that's out there. It's not novel, it's not radical. That's not what we're suggesting in this conversation. We're suggesting tying council pay to a living wage that we pay everyone else that is an employee of the city. But this isn't the hill I'm gonna die on. So I leave it to you, if we need to further this conversation for another time, I'm open to that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, I'm going to try to sum up and then make a suggestion. I'll also say, first of all, that I do believe that everybody on council should receive a living wage. And I really want to appreciate Councilmember Freeline, who's brought this up in the budget process, has been pursuing it, and I think it's important. And I've also really, I had certain different kinds of reservations about it, and I feel like I want to appreciate Councilmember Freeline, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Middleton, others for helping me come to this position. I do feel that everybody on council should get a living wage and that the mayor should get a little bit more. And I'll tell you my concern. My concern, and especially as I hear kind of people in my colleagues' discussion of where you're at and wanting to listen more and that kind of thing. One of the things that Raleigh did was they had a report and they had a big process around it. I don't think that we need that, but I do think in terms of listening more, I think we ought to listen a little bit more. I think we ought to have a hearing or some way for our residents to express themselves. And I think that that wouldn't be hard to do. We could have a time that we set in the near future, the very near future, if we wanted to have a time when we would ask members of the public to comment, we could hear their perspectives, and then that might give us some more guidance in making a decision. So that's my thought. I'm not hearing solid consensus around this table. Not that we have to do it by consensus, but I'm hearing even council members Caballero and Middleton who say that they're very supportive, saying that they want to listen more. I'm hearing Councilmember Reese say the same thing. So that's my suggestion. That's all it is. But it's I'm interested in any further comments. Of course, we could also accept a motion at this time or a request to understand where the body is at. I guess we'd have to suspend the rules if we had a motion, but Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the public hearing was proposed as part of the initial discussion we had and might be mentioned in the memo. I feel like that would be a good next step to put a public hearing on one of our upcoming agendas and invite people to have their voices heard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question. I know that Charlotte's on a 2-year term. Is Raleigh on the same cycle as well? Are they 2-year as well? Because I think, you just have a chance to get a lot more feedback than on a 4-year cycle, that's all.
I believe that Raleigh is, but someone can correct me.
Yes,
Raleigh is.
Raleigh is.
That's part of the report. It's not just they're trying to do a whole update of packaging, including staggered terms, 4-year terms. It's a kind of full package of redoing their council.
Yeah.
I think they're about to move to 4-year terms.
I was just looking for clarity on that, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I was just going to say the same thing.
Okay, thanks. Colleagues, any more comments? What do you all think about the idea? And maybe I'll ask for some thumbs of having a public hearing and then having having a time after that to make a decision. I see Councilmember Freeland, Councilmember Middleton, Councilmember Reese, Mayor Pro Tem, myself. Councilmember Freeman, did you have a comment or question?
Sorry, I was just, I was gonna say, I'm open to the public hearing, that's fine. But I was gonna ask something else, but I'm okay.
Sure. Did you have a question? Councilmember Freeman, did you have another question?
I was just gonna ask if it might be more, I would ask to kind of package it with some of the other conversations we've been having about the mayor's term being 4 years and a couple of other things that I think have been mentioned, so that it wasn't just, I mean, a chance to hear from folks. When you get a chance to hear, it's probably good to get a couple of questions answered. So that was all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, and with that clarification of where we can do it just through our charter authority and where we have to involve the General Assembly.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask Mr. Allure to come back on screen and Ms. Reardon. You have heard the scintillating conversation, Mr. Allure, of my colleagues. We are asking you all to put together at the appropriate time, not long from now, a public hearing where we could hear from folks on this question. Is that good?
That's doable. So there are, if I'm correct in this, 6 dates left in this calendar year. Is there a date that is more preferable to you than others? Or should I say, is there a date that is too late? I mean, we did note that, I think in the agenda item, shooting for the December 6th agenda cycle, that the 6th being the, was that too, is that?
Would that be meaning the public hearing would be prior to that? Or are you saying that would be the prior public hearing?
That would be the public hearing, or do you need it before then?
I mean, I would leave that to you all unless my colleagues have a, Councilmember Reese?
Did I hear you to say December 6th is what you're proposing for the public hearing?
I did.
I believe that's the night where
maybe
swearing
not a good
in
day.
newly elected members. I would recommend no.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
not
transition.
Okay.
So why don't you all let us know? We'll trust
Certainly.
your judgment. You all figure it out. You tell us when.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, for an excellent conversation. Doesn't sound like this is quite ripe, but moving ahead. Now we'll move to item 4. And
I think I pulled that one.
Item 4 was pulled by Councilmember Caballero, yes.
I just had a quick question for Reginald if he's here. It was based on the email, and I appreciate the questions that you sent Mayor Schul to get some clarification on that. In the email, you just said that there was, what I couldn't understand if it was this, and I'm calling it emergency CDBG versus regular CBDG, because I know that that's the wrong term, but that's what I'm calling it right now. That there was guidance that we needed to kind of broaden our view beyond housing needs. And I wanted a clarification, was it for just this kind of, COVID tied funds or just in general?
So it's a good question, and thank you for the clarification. Reginald Johnson, Director, Department of Community Development. So in the email, I was referring to the distinction between regular CDBG funding and COVID CDBG funding. So one of the things that, and the mayor had asked questions about, was this particular funding different from regular CDBG funding? And the answer is yes. It is, because one, it must have a COVID tie. Expenditures must have a COVID tie. And then I also mentioned that it is different because we are permitted to, in regular CDBG, there's a 15% cap on public services. With this funding CDBG, the cap is lifted. That means in the public services category, we can use all the money for public services if we desire. So also the mayor was asking me, well, normally use our money for housing. This is regular CDBG. So I'm clarifying that money the question was referring to regular CDBG. And what I was saying was, yes, that is true, but I was also making the distinction that CDBG is a broad funding. We can use it on a range of things. We have elected in Durham to focus a good part of it on housing. The point now, getting to your specific question, was that HUD has suggested to us, HUD Greensboro and HUD, the consultant that they have helped assigned to help us, have suggested that we need to be careful about how much we put in housing, particularly housing development, because housing development plans, and as they can shift, will affect how your expenditure deadlines in HUD for CDBG. So for example, and you've seen the project, so say we're having CDBG for a development project, but the schedule shifts. The CDBG expenditure deadline does not shift, it's statutory. And so if you have money assigned to a particular project, but you don't spend it by the deadline, you run into challenges.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just, in future conversations, not now, just I appreciate the memo. I thought it was a great, the kind of, we couldn't use the same money for the same thing that we've already used it on, and DPS was in a similar situation. So I was glad that both sides innovated around that. But yes, in the future, just curious to hear more around, we're using all of our regular CDBG towards housing needs, and you listed the other places that we could be potentially using it. So would be interested in having a conversation on potential other options.
Yes, we'd be glad to have that. Be glad to have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. All right. Any other questions or comments on item 4? All righty, thank you. If not, we'll move to item 9, interlocal agreement for fire emergency medical services EMS station. And I'm sorry that I can't remember who pulled this item.
I pulled that one too, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right.
Just very quickly, and maybe it came up before and I just don't remember it because I know this is cycled through because of increased expenses, but why are we not doing a solar array on Firehouse 18 the way we did on Firehouse 17?
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Todd Tingler with General Services. Member Caballero, we are doing a solar array on Fire Station 18.
Okay, I didn't see it in the rendering. It didn't look clear to me. So, and then when I reread it, I couldn't find it, even in the list of where there's the construction expenses.
Yes, there will be a solar array on the roof, just as we did on Fire Station 17.
Okay, that was it. That was my only question. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Tingler. Thank you, Council Member. That's good to know. All right, we'll now move to item 10, proposal to create a City of Durham Poet Laureate program. Is Ms. Brown with us? Good. Ms. Brown, welcome. Glad to see you. There is a, no, okay, I was just checking in the panelists, in the attendees. Okay. Ms. Brown, why don't you give us a brief report, and then we will see if there are any questions.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. The Durham Cultural Advisory Board recommended to fund an opportunity for a Poet Laureate position. Their recommendation is to have a pilot year in the first year in order to assess how the selection process goes, and also to make assessments for the poet's actual duties.
All right, thank you very much. They also recommended a $5,000 honorarium or stipend.
That is correct.
And you've now in your memo suggested a selection process, which I thought was very good.
The selection process will be, rolled out with information that's provided by the Durham Cultural Advisory Board members and also the poets who presented the proposal, in addition to having a call for poets and a nomination process.
And this process would go probably through, as I remember, through sometime next spring.
That's correct.
Before the appointment was made.
With the appointment of the poets to occur simultaneously with the city's fiscal year.
Thank you. I actually, now that I'm thinking of this, I believe Mayor Pro Tem, you may have pulled this item. Do you have questions or comments?
You have asked all of my questions. I do have a comment, which is I'm just really excited about this and wanted to thank the staff and the members of the CAB and of course the poets who brought us the proposal for making it happen. I was hoping that we would be able to get someone appointed before Mayor Schul left office so that he could appoint our first poet laureate, because I know how much he loves poetry, but I'm hoping that we'll just be able to bring him back for the first induction and have him be a part of it in some way. Because I do think your timeline makes sense and it would be a rush to get it done more quickly than that, but really excited about moving this forward and thank you for all your work.
Thank you. General Services is really excited to have this as one of our pilot projects to work with DCAB on. So thank you all for your support.
Thank you so much. You know, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm so egotistical that when other people pull items, sometimes I think I do it and I go ahead and just dive in. Sorry.
That is not a correct description of you. Just had to.
Are there any other questions or comments for Ms. Brown? Councilmember Freeline, another maybe a one-day poet laureate of Durham.
Whoa. Well, my suggestion, I guess I could bring this up at the CAB meeting and I probably will, but since it's on my mind and you asked, Mr. Mayor, I was just thinking about Polly Murray in this moment and how, what an awesome contribution she's made to our city. And I think it would be cool for some aspect of this to be named after her. If, maybe we could reach out to the Polly Murray Center and see if they'd be down with something like that. But whether it's the Durham Polly Murray Poet Laureate or maybe an opening event where we announce them as named after Polly or something like that. So just wanted to put that out in the ethers and I'll discuss that more with the board at our next board meeting. But just wanted to share that.
Great idea. Among many other things, she was a poet. Councilmember Freeman.
I was just going to say, I really like that idea, and I would love for it to be something that folks got engaged on. I'm certain there are other poet names that might rise up, but definitely interested in that. I want to be at that CAB meeting when you discuss it, because I'm sure there's going to be some other names.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, any further comments? We're very happy, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm being told by the clerk to speak closer to my microphone. I may be in the same situation as last week. How about now? You guys hear me all right? Good. Thank you, Ms. Brown, we're appreciative. All right, colleagues, we'll now move on to item 11, Durham City County Immigrant Refugee Affairs Interlocal Agreement. And I'm going to try to remember that, I don't know who pulled this. Can someone remind me? Councilmember Freeman, sorry.
I'm gonna wait for you in, the egotistical way that doesn't exist in you.
I could have dove right in. Could have assumed I can pull them all. Go ahead, Councilmember.
And then mainly, I would have mentioned it previously, but just noting with Representative Ayanna Presley's comments today, how often, I guess, folks are left out of the conversation. And so I know that this is a COVID-related task force item that came in. I just wanted to make sure we loop in the conversation around I don't know if it's a difference between the immigrant and migrant, acknowledging that the folks over in Texas being abused at this point under the bridge, from the Haitian earthquake, if they would be included in this as well, if that needed to be written in, or if it needed to be, or if it was understood. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that before we move forward.
Thank you. I see both Ms. Stansel and Mr. Best are with us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Constance Stansel, Director of Neighborhood Improvement Services. Linwood Best is here to answer your questions today.
Thank you. Mr. Best, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Linwood Best. Yes, all refugees and immigrants included in this process. This is a citywide process addressing all people coming within the city of Durham, county of Durham, because this is a joint city-county program initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just hope that you could state that clearly in the memo, because I would hate for folks to misrepresent us in follow-up conversations and say that we didn't include it or we weren't talking about the Haitian migrants that are in Texas. So that was all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, Madam Manager, we now have 3 items that are left, 14, 15, and 19. 19 is the weekly COVID-19 testing options. 14 is the GoDurham ACCESS, and 15 is the second quarter crime report. My inclination, well, do you have any preference for what goes first?
Certainly the GoDurham ACCESS services overview will probably be quick.
That's what I was thinking.
And then the other 2 items, we'll both probably have some discussion around them.
All right, that's what I was thinking. Thank you. Colleagues, just in terms of letting staff and at least one member of the public who's here to comment on this get on with their days. We'll start with item 14, and I'm going to ask Marie Faison is here. Ms. Faison, well, why don't we'll hear first from Sean Egan, Transportation Director, and then we'll have Ms. Faison's comments. Go ahead, Mr. Egan.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. I'm Sean Egan. I'm the Director of Transportation for the City of Durham. And I've come here today to talk about the GoDurham ACCESS program. We've made a number of changes to the program recently, and wanted to share with you some of the updates and the initiatives that we have underway. So I hope everyone's able to see my screen unobstructed.
Yes, we are.
All right. So just some background on ADA paratransit service. So it's been 30 years now since the enactment of the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. And one of the key goals of the ADA was to provide equal opportunity, equal access to facilities and services for people with disabilities. And so as part of this, any fixed route, so that's a bus or rail system that receives federal funding support for public transit, is required to provide complimentary ADA paratransit service for people who have a disability that prevents them from being able to use the fixed route transit service. So any ride that would be within 3/4 of a mile of one of our bus stops, if the service is inaccessible because of ADA, is provided by paratransit. So we've taken a series of steps on our fixed route system, such as having wheelchair ramps on all of our buses fully equipped to make them more accessible, but we have some work to do to make our system fully accessible. And until we're able to do that, we're going to see a significant number of trips on our ACCESS ADA paratransit service. So each system provides its own eligibility qualifications. Here for Durham ACCESS, GoDurham ACCESS, 60 years of age or older with a disability. There are also special eligibilities for work-related trips, medical transportation, or other special qualifications. And service is also provided to residents in the rural areas of Durham County. As I talked about, it's not just the vehicles that have to be accessible. We know that many of our fixed route bus stop facilities in Durham are inaccessible. So the accessibility requirements, for example, are that there should be a 5-foot by 8-foot clear and improved level surface landing area. There should be an improved pathway that connects to a safe crosswalk. What we have across most of our stops in Durham is what you see here on Maureen Road, where it is essentially a signpost in the grass, and there's no improved surface, there's no safe crosswalk there. And so anyone who lives in one of the apartment complex near this stop would be eligible for our access service because the fixed route infrastructure is not accessible. And so we're seeing a significant number of requests for service that are tied to the inaccessibility of our fixed route system. And that's why we're working very carefully through the Durham County Transit Plan to address accessibility improvements at our bus stops to make every single bus stop in Durham accessible for people of all different abilities. So if the person's disability or the facilities or infrastructure are inaccessible, that person under our rules is fully eligible for access services. And our current cost per trip is $48, which compares to about less than $4 for the fixed route bus service. So it's a much more expensive service to provide than our fixed route. The history in Durham is that the city took over the Duke Power transit services. One of my predecessors, the late Mark Aronson, was instrumental in the transition of those services from Duke Power to the city. That was in 1991. The first interlocal agreement between the city and county was in 1998, looking and was focused on eligibility certification, customer service, and other administrative services. GoDurham ACCESS began a partnership with Lincoln Community Health in 2010. This partnership provides vehicles that have reached the end of their federal useful life, but are still in good working condition to Lincoln Community Health. Lincoln Community Health can then use those vehicles with their drivers and their operations infrastructure to bring their clients to medical appointments. Their clients who would otherwise be eligible for access services are served by the Lincoln service instead. And so it's a great use of our equipment and the operations and services from Lincoln Community Health, and provides a good customer experience for those clients. And then as a result of a regional rebranding in 2015, what had been the data access program became GoDurham ACCESS. And in 2019, the city and county agreed to a more comprehensive merger of not just administrative functions, but all service operations and maintenance functions for the city and county access paratransit programs. So that was the initial short-term agreement from 2019. We went through a process to select a new provider with new performance standards for improved on-time performance, customer service. That process resulted in a new vendor, National Express Transit, that was selected and began in 2020. And then once we had a full understanding of the cost structure associated with that new operations and maintenance contract, we worked closely with Durham County to finalize what's now a 5-year merger agreement, so that there are no longer two separate city and county access systems. All of the services are provided by GoDurham ACCESS. So as I said, National Express is our new vendor. They operate across the United States, a number of properties. They hired 62 local employees, and there's an average hourly rate of $16.25. The city has informed our Go Triangle operations team that there is funding available to be able to ensure a livable wage for GoDurham ACCESS operators during the next wage adjustment. So we're looking forward to making sure that the staff are compensated for the important critical work that they do. They did receive earlier this year a frontline worker bonus that was consistent with frontline worker bonuses provided to city employees, and they're also benefiting from a 5% premium pay for frontline workers. So we've seen since the last 20 years a significant increase in ACCESS ridership, cresting over 200,000 trips a year. We've seen a recent decline in that with the COVID-19 pandemic, but we expect with the changing demographics of our community and the aging of our community that in the future we will see that ridership rebound and then grow beyond the prior peak levels. For our core ADA service, we are providing generally round trips. Most of our service is in central Durham. We see the red dots on the map, but there is service that is provided across the city of Durham for these ADA trips. We also provide the non-ADA or beyond ADA, the services to residents of Durham County, and those services include non-emergency medical transportation, for example, to the UNC health system in Chapel Hill, as well as opportunities for job access. In terms of the demographics, the 40 to 65 is our largest age demographic, and 2/3 of our ACCESS riders have a disability. About a quarter of our ACCESS riders use a wheelchair, and 12% of our riders are using the system every day, generally for work trips to get to and from the workplace. We see that the medical trips represent the largest share of our trip purposes, followed by employment and education, but our riders can use it for any trip purpose. If they're going to the grocery store, if they're going to church on Sunday, any trip purpose is eligible. We collect this for information to help us better understand the needs of our customers. We have a $5.4 million annual budget that comes from the city transit fund from property taxes, as well as federal grants. There's funding in the Durham County Transit Plan. There's rural operating assistance provided by North Carolina DOT. And then there's also non-emergency medical transportation provided by social services that is funded from the federal Medicaid program. We've had some delays in getting our Medicaid updated. So we're hopeful that within the next month, we will have the fully updated Medicaid agreement with Department of Social Services in Durham County. But for any customers who need non-emergency medical transportation who would have been eligible for the Medicaid program, as long as they call our reservation line 919-560-1551, we'll make sure that they have a trip while we finalize the details of that agreement. So we don't want anyone to go without transportation that they need to get to their medical appointments. We hear a lot from our customers about where we can improve. On-time performance is a big concern for our riders. And so we're working to develop better performance measures, make sure that both our pickups and our drop-offs are on time, that we have enough staff to be able to provide all of the trips, and that we're looking at and we're in the process of launching a third-party agreement to provide ambulatory trip services for things like medical appointments like dialysis. And we've just received a funding a federal award through the Durham Chapel Hill Carrboro Metropolitan Planning Organization to support that work. And we're looking at possibilities to expand that program using a transportation networking company that has specialized training in providing services to people with disabilities and meeting all of the federal regulatory requirements. One of the other big things that we've heard over and over again is that all the trips have to be booked a full day in advance. Our riders want to be able to make plans and go in the same day. And so that's probably the most exciting prospect that we have on the horizon right now for fiscal year 22. In the next month, we may be able to provide that same day service. So we're looking to accelerate that as much as possible to provide that flexibility for our customers. What we've heard from many of our customers is that they want to be able to use our fixed route service. They want to be able to use the bus service. They want to be able to just go out to the bus stop when they decide that they want to go somewhere and be able to use that service. They like the flexibility of doing that, but there are those barriers like the accessibility of our bus stops that make it difficult for access riders to use the fixed route system. So we're trying to provide better, more responsive services on access while we work through that process to make our fixed route system fully accessible. So the on-demand scheduling is the pilot project that we have underway right now with the new federal funding. We launched a Food for Seniors program that provides shuttle services from senior housing 1 day a week to the grocery store so that folks make sure they always have access to groceries. We've been providing trips for free to vaccination sites for the COVID-19 vaccinations. And then we're exploring microtransit demand response opportunities with our service to better meet the needs of our community and our riders. So with that, I'll stop and happy to answer any questions from the council.
Mr. Egan, thank you so much. That was a great report, and I really appreciate hearing about some of the innovations that are coming. I'm going to now ask Marie Faison. Madam Clerk, could you please make Marie Faison able to be heard? Ms. Faison, welcome, and we're glad to have you. Ms. Faison is a longtime driver with our paratransit services. And Ms. Faison, we're glad to have you, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I wish I had as much time as Mr. Egan, but I understand time constraints. I just wanted to say that I do appreciate all of the improvements being made. I don't understand why we picked the company that we picked, because they didn't have any experience with paratransit. They generally work with schools and things of that nature. And the other thing is, I was also checking their stock is way up. And when you get companies like this, their main idea is not community. And I speak on community. I stand on community. And I hear all the numbers, everything fits nice and tight, but I see what I see when I service the clients. And I see what I see when I do my job. And I've been doing it for 19 years. And I'm not asking for it. I don't put a money value on serving your community, because I live here and I care about the people that live here. And what I don't see is the company showing that appreciation for being able to service our community. And that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see them appreciate the community that we live in and respect it. And all these numbers are fine, but when you get down to it, all the services, I want to see people get where they have to go on time. And I also would like to see more communication between the council and the mayor, the people that hire the companies that do the businesses, and hold them accountable for the services. You know, I know that we don't have enough drivers. Some of the drivers are disgruntled because of the influx of new drivers coming in, and but it's just a matter of time before that collapses also. So we want to do something that's long-standing, something that will stand the test of time, and continue to service our community that we live in. And that's all I think I could say in 3 minutes. I appreciate your time.
Ms. Faison, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for being such a wonderful member of the staff and the driver, and for doing this really important work. And thank you for your comments. We really appreciate them, and we take them very seriously.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I'll now entertain questions and comments. We'll start with Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Egan and Ms. Faison. I appreciate the presentation and the follow-up comments as well. I know that when I used to serve as the chair of the Access Board, when it was just for the county, well, it was through the county, I know there was a lot of concern about the federal funding being cut. And then what I'm hearing is you're saying that there's new federal funding being provided through COVID. Is that going to be continuous? Do you know where we are with that grant that used to be in place for the rural community, kind of like connecting us back to those folks who aren't within the city limits?
So there have been some changes through the North Carolina Department of Transportation. They have the Rural Operating Assistance Program. It's called ROPE. It's for non-urbanized transit services across the state of North Carolina. When the additional federal relief for COVID was provided, starting with the CARES Act, the General Assembly zeroed out all funding for the ROPE program as well as the State Maintenance Assistance Program. So the rationale provided at the time was that since there was additional federal funding, the state could zero out support for these services. So in the case of Durham County, in other cases, the rural areas were receiving federal funds, but Durham County was not eligible to receive any federal funds. So Durham County was excluded from any benefit from that. So that the county lost the ROPE funds and is not eligible for the federal funds. What we are hearing now from NCDOT is that they're going to be accepting applications for the FY22 for the ROPE and SMAP programs. And we're hopeful that that funding will be restored in the final state budget. And we're also looking at federal funding opportunities like the competitive award that we won that will hopefully be able to enable that same day service on a pilot basis. If we can demonstrate that program is successful, we'll be looking at federal funds as well as the Durham County Transit Plan as a potential funding source to continue to offer that service that meets a need that we've been hearing so much from residents and riders about.
Thank you. I really appreciate your understanding of the complexities of this all. And I want to be the one to highlight, which is why I wanted to highlight exactly what the problem is, and that our state would actually kind of leave us out to kind of handle this expense on our own for the people who are most vulnerable to COVID and in a time of desperate need. It's acknowledging that people with disabilities and people who are especially wheelchair bound are limited to, especially in our rural community, are limited to this access ride, and to zero out ROPE benefits or ROPE dollars is absolutely irresponsible. And so I just want to make sure that my colleagues all heard that. And I appreciate you giving that update. Thank you.
Thank you for that important question, Council Member. I didn't know that, and thank you for highlighting that. Other questions and comments, colleagues? Any other questions or comments? Mr. Egan, this is such an important service, and I'm really glad to hear about a lot of the innovations that are taking place, things that I didn't know about. And I had asked for this report so we could get an update now, especially with the merger. I learned a lot from reading it and from your presentation, and so I just want to express my gratitude.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share the important work that we're doing to serve our community.
Thank you so much. And also I wanted to say to Ms. Faison, we hear you. And I know that, I guess I should add one more thing, Mr. Egan. I'm glad to hear that we're getting the pay up to the livable wage. We really need to do that. I know that they're not officially our employees, but the fact that we are budgeting for that is critically important. And I want to thank you for that. All right, colleagues, we'll now move to item 15. And that item is the crime report. And I see Interim Chief Montgomery. Chief, good to see you.
Here. Mr. Mayor.
Madam Manager.
Yes, if I may, I would just like to, before Chief Montgomery starts today with her first crime report, I really would like to thank Chief Montgomery for serving admirably in the interim police chief role. The police department works hard every single day on some very, very important community safety matters that we have going on in our community. We are in constant contact and using constant communication and strategy to help keep this community safe. And I wanted to publicly acknowledge the leadership of Interim Chief Montgomery and her leaders, as well as her other employees who do this work on a daily basis.
Madam Manager, thank you for those most appropriate and important comments. We appreciate it. And Chief, we appreciate you. And we're really glad you're here. This is your first quarterly report. I promise you we won't be too hard on you. And so go into it with nerves of steel.
Well, thank you, Madam City Manager Page. Good afternoon, Mayor Schul, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, City Council members, Madam City Manager Page, and Deputy City Manager Ferguson. Thank you for this opportunity to present our second quarter information. This report covers the police department's first 5 performance measures: Part 1, violent crime; Part 1, property crime; clearance rates; response times to priority 1 calls; and staffing levels. I will also discuss some of the 2021 second quarter highlights. Next slide. Part 1, violent crime, includes homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Part 1 violent crime was down by 4% during the first 6 months of 2021 compared to the same period in 2020. There were 23 criminal homicides in the first 2 quarters of 2021 compared to 16 in the first 2 quarters of 2020. During the first 6 months of 2021, investigators cleared 6 homicide cases from 2021 and 3 from 2020. 1 2021 criminal homicide case has been classified as domestic violence. The number of reported sexual assaults during the first 6 months of 2021 was up 29% compared to the same period in 2020. There does not appear to be any indication that these incidents are serial in nature. 36% of the rape cases reported during the first 2 quarters of 2021 happened in 2020 or earlier. Robberies dropped by 14% during the first 6 months of 2021 compared to the same period in 2020. 77% of the robberies during the first half of 2021 were from persons, compared to 79% in the first 6 months of 2020 and 86% in the first 6 months of 2019. 37% of the robberies from persons in 2021 involved at least 1 Hispanic victim, compared to 31% during the same time in 2020. Commercial robberies decreased by 5%, and 40% of the commercial robberies were from convenience stores. 55% of all robberies involved firearms, and 9 people were shot during robberies in the first 2 quarters of 2021. Next slide. Aggravated assaults were down by 4% during the first 6 months of 2021 compared to the same period in 2020. 38% of all aggravated assaults during the first 2 quarters were from multi-victim firearm incidents versus 43% during the first 6 months of 2020. It should be noted that one firearm-related incident may produce multiple victims, and in some cases, there may not be any injuries. 29% of all aggravated assault cases were domestic related. The number of shooting incidents dropped by 8% from 434 during the first 6 months of 2020 to 400 in 2021. The number of shooting victims decreased slightly from 122 in the first 6 months of 2020 to 120 during the same period in 2021. The department centralized our Criminal Investigations Division, also known as CID, in June of 2021. District investigators are now a part of this division. This helps us identify patterns and issues across districts and gives us more flexibility to place resources where needed. The Centralized Violent Crimes Task Force, which was formed in September 2020, is now the Violent Crimes Unit and is under CID. Since inception, they have handled more than 530 cases. We also know that people who commit violent crimes often also commit property crimes, so the centralization helps our investigators share information and identify suspects. We are continuing to do many community outreach activities, which you will see in the upcoming slides. These activities help us enhance our police community partnerships and provide mentoring and other activities for at-risk youth in an effort to deter violence. We recently released a video campaign to educate the community about the effects of gun violence and to encourage them to work with us to reduce violent crime. Next slide. Part 1 property crime includes burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. Reported Part 1 property crime made up 81% of all Part 1 crime during the first 6 months of 2021. Part 1 property crime was down by 14% at the end of the second quarter, and there were decreases in all Part 1 property crime categories. Burglaries were down significantly by 30% during the first 6 months of 2021. Residential burglaries were down by 37%, which may be due in part to more people being at home during the pandemic. Commercial burglaries were down by 4%. The top 3 business types targeted were specialty stores, restaurants, and convenience stores. Larcenies accounted for 62% of all reported Part 1 crime. 43% of larcenies were from motor vehicles, which is the same as the first 6 months in 2020. 30% of the larcenies involved shoplifting. We continue to receive numerous reports of tools and construction equipment being stolen. Officers and investigators set up several operations targeting thefts from construction sites and made several arrests. We've also noticed a significant increase in the catalytic converter thefts, which has been a problem throughout the nation due to the increasing value of the precious metals in this equipment. We've been working closely with investigators from nearby agencies to identify suspects in these thefts. And as usual, Honda Accords remain the most common stolen vehicle. This has been a trend for many years. At least 48% of the stolen vehicles were left running and/or had keys left in them. 85% of the stolen vehicles, motor vehicles, have been recovered. Next slide. We compare our department's clearance rates to those of other departments our size. We are in the FBI's 250,000 to right under 500,000 population category. Our clearance rates were better than average for cities our size and robberies in all Part 1 property crimes. It should be noted on the rape clearances, approximately 1/3 of the cases were from prior years. These cases often require DNA evidence to be processed by the state lab, and these results can take a minimum of 6 months to be returned to an investigator. Next slide. There were 3,779 Priority 1 calls for service in the first half of 2021, which is a 3% decrease from 3,910 Priority 1 calls during the same period in 2020. Our target response time is 5.8 minutes or less. During this time, our average response time was 6.1 minutes. We answered 51.9% of Priority 1 calls in less than 5 minutes in the first 2 quarters of 2021. Patrol staffing levels affect response times. We continue to use overtime funds to pay for supplemental patrol officers, which increases our ability to respond quickly to emergency calls. We have adjusted the supplemental staffing to put more officers on the road during peak call times. Next slide. Our sworn staffing was at 85% at the end of June 2021, compared to 93% at the end of June 2020. Our non-sworn staffing was at 90% at the end of June 2021, compared to 89% at the end of June 2020. BLET 53 graduated 4 recruits on September 8th. BLET 54 started on September 13th with 16 recruits, 15 remain. There were 294 applicants, including 192 from North Carolina and 59 from Durham. ALET 24 started on August 16th and will include 2 in-state transfers and 1 out-of-state transfer. Recruiting officers were able to start attending some in-person job fairs during the second quarter. The recruiting unit set up an information table at the Durham Bulls Pride Night on June 30th. The recruiting unit's 12-month digital marketing campaign ended on June 30th. The campaign covered North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Northeastern Georgia, and Eastern Tennessee. The unit also worked with Morrison McDaniel Management Consultants and Police App to set up a 2-day applicant testing event at Northern High School on June 26th and 27th. This event produced some viable applicants. The recruiting unit has also been holding several local pop-up events, which have been advertised on social media. These have included monthly events at Starbucks, Wheels, and other locations. The recruiting unit continues to try out-of-the-box ideas to reach potential DPD recruits. Next slide. The Durham Police Department continues to review applications for U non-immigrant status, commonly known as U visa, in an effort to assist with the investigation and successful prosecution of certain crimes. By reviewing and certifying applications, the department seeks to security assistance and testimony of crime victims who may otherwise become unavailable due to their immigration status. The police department processed 29 U visa requests during the second quarter of 2021. 83% were approved, which is the highest approval percentage we've had. Next slide. Looking at updates from our adult misdemeanor diversion program. These are the statistics from the Criminal Justice Resource Center for the program since it began in October 2015 through June 2021. The program originally was for adults ages 16 to 21 until February 2019, when DPD did an expansion to include up to age 26 and older adults at officer discretion. There have been 374 participants enrolled to date with a 100% completion rate. Only 16 participants reoffended within 1 year of the completion. The program demographics are made up of 58% African American, 25% Caucasian, 14% Hispanic, 2% Pacific Islander, and 1% other. 100% of the referrals have come from DPD. The program also provides referrals to wraparound services, including education services, employment assistance, mental health, mentoring, substance abuse evaluations, treatment, and housing. During COVID-19, community resources for food, financial resources, and other needs have been provided to all misdemeanor diversion program participants free of charge. These resources and programs are available in English and Spanish. Next slide. Our Police Athletic League, or PAL program, has adapted its activities to provide opportunities for youth during the pandemic. Activities have ranged from basketball, golf, and baseball to new activities such as the community gardening and a fitness club. PAL partnered with Neighborhood Improvement Services, or NIS, for these community gardening activities, and they met on Tuesday afternoons at the Hoover Road community. The Summer Fitness Club, which was open to police explorers and PAL participants, met at 7 a.m. on Tuesdays at Twin Lakes Park. Club members got an inside look at DPD physical training. The program has now ended for the summer. Our new PAL venturing program has continued to provide mentoring as well as fun and educational activities for youth in our community. In the photo on the slide, venturers and PAL members took a field trip to the North Carolina Museum of Life and Science on May 22nd. Officers have continued to come up with new and innovative ways to partner with and reach out to the community. Next slide. DPD employees reached out to the community in many ways during the second quarter. This slide and the following slide show a snapshot of just a few of those events. In April, several DPD officers spent time with members of the community at the Main Street townhomes as part of the Community Builder Spring Fling event. Also in April, officers from the Community Resource Unit made over 100 community contacts during its 4-day community pop-up event at Wellens Village Shopping Center. Taking advantage of lunchtime traffic each day, officers engaged shopping center patrons and workers and provided safety resources and tips related to robbery, personal safety, vehicle safety, and information about Durham Crime Stoppers. The police department's motor unit joined with the Durham Fire Department, the Durham County Sheriff's Office, and the Orange County Sheriff's Office in April to help a 10-year-old who suffers from serious medical issues celebrate his birthday in style with a parade in front of his home. Officers were honored to be a part of this special celebration. For the second time in 2 years, District 5 Squad A Officer M.M. Atkins unofficially adopted a high school senior whose graduation was diminished by COVID-19 pandemic. Officer Atkins and 9 other A Squad members held a brief graduation celebration in June at North Carolina Central University for this senior who graduated from Bertie High School and will be attending NCCU this fall, majoring in criminal justice. She has aspirations of working in law enforcement and or attending law school. Next slide. This slide includes more second quarter community activities. DPD employees participated in community safety and recognition events, raised funds for Special Olympics North Carolina, and helped build and deliver beds during the second quarter. Several DPD employees attended a Giving Back to the Blue First Responders Appreciation event on May 21st at Fellowship Baptist Church. This is a great opportunity for officers to have their positive interactions with community members. On May 22nd, officers from the Community Engagement Unit partnered with North Carolina Safe Kids to hold a hot car safety event at Walmart on Glen School Road. They spoke with approximately 150 people and handed out 75 safety flyers. On May 25th, DPD employees ran and biked 11 miles to raise funds for Special Olympics North Carolina as part of the Law Enforcement Torch Run relay. The employees took the virtual torch from DPD headquarters to Briar Creek, where it was handed over to Raleigh PD employees who carried it to the Special Olympics Games Cauldron lighting ceremony on May 27th. Officers from the Community Engagement Unit continued to volunteer with the Sleep in Heavily Peace Bed Build program. Volunteers with this program and officers build beds for children in need and then deliver and assemble these beds so no child has to sleep on the floor. Our employees have participated in this program since the fall of 2018 and have helped build more than 250 beds. This concludes my presentation. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Ms. Montgomery, thank you so much. Before we have questions from the council, we have 2 members of the public who've signed up to speak on this item. And we'll begin with Donald Hughes. Madam Clerk, can you make Mr. Hughes available to be heard? Mr. Hughes, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I want to start off by thanking Chief Montgomery for her report and for her service. I also want to thank the staff of the Durham Police Department for their service during what we know are difficult times for our community. I have 2 personal experiences. One was that of a missing great-grandmother in my neighborhood where officers spent hours along with community members searching for this great-grandmother, and fortunately were able to find her. Also yesterday, I happened to catch a news story of a Durham Police Department officer getting out of their vehicle to assist a resident that was in a stalled mechanical wheelchair by pushing them up a hill. So these are just some examples of the work that our law enforcement officers do that may not get recognized. So I want to personally thank you as a resident of Durham. But Mr. Mayor and members of the council, my remarks today are for you. We are tired. We're tired of the oppression Olympics and passing of the buck to the state when we say that Black lives are being lost in our streets due to gun violence, Councilmember Caballero. We're tired of the grandstanding and use of national political talking points when we say that Black lives are being lost in our streets to gun violence, Councilmember Johnson. We're tired of elected officials using our communities when running for re-election, but being conspicuously silent after crime happens, and when we say that Black lives are being lost in our streets due to gun violence, we're the ones that are standing for hours with our neighbors as they watch their Black children lay in the streets surrounded by yellow crime scene tape, Mr. Mayor. We're the ones that are kept up at night by the sound of more than 20 rounds being fired off, praying that another life has not been taken, like I experienced in my own neighborhood a couple of weeks ago. We are tired. And while we are tired, we're not going to give up. We will continue to demand that you allocate millions of dollars, just as you've committed to the participatory budgeting program, for jobs and paid training for our young people. We will continue to demand that you invest in affordable housing, free of mold, roaches, and sewage for Black families with household incomes even less than the salary increase that you discussed for yourselves today, members of this council. We will continue to demand that the voices of those closest to the pain are elevated when decisions are being made in our communities, including those in our community who are asking for ShotSpotter technology here in Durham. And we will continue to demand that you fund Black organizations that are working in Black communities with Black residents to address Black issues such as behavioral health, food insecurity, housing instability, violence, and more. Members of the council, Mr. Mayor, we're tired. We're tired of you playing politics without Black lives. And today we say enough. And I wasn't going to address this, but at the start of the meeting, Council Member Johnson mentioned that part of the reason that crime or attacks on bus drivers may be happening is because we've expanded access and allowed folks to ride our GoDurham buses for free. I think that is appalling to say, and that at a time when people are so just their lives have been upended by this pandemic, the idea that expanding access to a necessary public service such as public transportation is looked at as the reason for an increase in attacks on our bus drivers without any support and data, I think must be addressed and must be called out. Durham, that is not what we value, and I hope that Councilmember Johnson really addresses the impact of her statements. And I don't know what your intent is, and I don't presume to know what your intent, but I know what I heard and what other community members heard when a statement such as that was made. But I hope that you all really take
Mr. Hughes, thank you. Your time is up. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
The second speaker is Ms. Jacqueline Wagstaff. Madam Clerk, can you please make Ms. Wagstaff available to be heard?
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can, Ms. Wagstaff. Welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
As usual, always a pleasure. But I don't have much to say because everything was said that I might have said with the previous speaker. But I did have a question about this report. I don't know if you know about it, and I've seen Victoria on several occasions ask for the part 2 of this crime report. But I was looking at what the U.S. Department of Education has required of our college campuses, and based on the press conference that was had a couple of days ago after the death of 2 young men on the North Carolina Central campus, and the most recent death that's right across the street from the communication building at North Carolina Central, there is a crime report that's essential to just the school. They have a crime report that they put out that talks about all of the crimes that occur on the campus, and also outside of the campus at their campus locations, their housing locations. And I just want to know if that report, that data, is it included in this report that is given by our interim chief today? If not, why haven't we included it? And can we look at the data that comes from Duke? We have 2 major institutions in North Carolina, in Durham, and both of those institutions have data that is collected about crime and criminal activity that occurs inside those walls and those campuses. And when I heard the chancellor talk about the most recent incidents and try to equate it to the outside elements of Fayetteville Street and people on Fayetteville Street, we need to understand, when I looked at this report, there's a lot going on inside that campus, for anything from rapes and assaults to property crimes, all types of things. And this report needs to be included in the Durham report, because that campus is a public university that sits inside of one of our major distressed areas. So I would just like to know if this report has been considered, and if not, why not?
Thank you very much for being with us, Ms. Wagstaff. We appreciate your being here. All right, colleagues, you have heard the report from Chief Montgomery, and I'm going to now ask for any comments or questions that colleagues might have. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief Montgomery, for being with us. My sense is that an announcement for our new chief is probably imminent. At some point, it's certainly closer than further away. So let me now take the opportunity to thank you for the really remarkable job you've done. Some pretty challenging times. It doesn't matter that you were interim chief. When the history is written, your name is in the line of chiefs, of our top leaders and executives in the department. No asterisk or anything. You were chief, and our chief, and you've done a great job under some challenging circumstances. So I want to congratulate you and thank you for your willingness to step forward and provide leadership to the largest department on our organizational chart during some challenging times. So thank you for that. I do also want to shout out. I scanned the media as well. I saw some great stories. I think it was officers May and Nobles who were cited for rendering some life-saving attention to one of our residents. So please pass our shout out. Let them know they were shouted out at the city council meeting. And I believe it was Officer Harris, who's the officer who got out and helped a resident that was in a wheelchair get pushed up the hill. So please pass along that officer was shouted out as well here today, and thank them for their service. So a couple of questions. First thing I wanted to, it's not germane to your actual crime report, but I think it is important because I've gotten some questions from people in the community and the media, and just want to give you an opportunity to clarify something. Recently, we had an audit of our body camera usage in the department, and some recommendations were made. And anytime people hear that recommendations are made pursuant or subsequent to an audit, they usually think that that's something really, really bad. And as I read the report, the recommendations had to do with things like management of the incredible amount of data that these cameras are capturing and correctly marking them, as opposed to officers turning off cameras insidiously or nefariously turning them off when they should be on. And that's what some people were thinking, uh-oh, the officers aren't using their body cameras properly. But it was really, at least in my read, more about information management. You want to take a few minutes just to talk about that audit and just let the public know, what your stand is on that?
Absolutely. So, and you're correct. A lot of the information that was in there was not about officers turning off the cameras during calls or missing important evidence or information. It's how the calls are tagged. And a lot of officers, when they would call in on the radio, we have codes to tag them. And the computer system has the ability, but the officers weren't going back to verify that both the computer and them tagged the calls correctly. So most of the calls that were then labeled improperly, was what was stated in the audit, were lower level calls, maybe like a calls for service that instead of being held for 80 days would be held for a year, 180 days would be held for a year. And then the actual monitoring, where the supervisors were to monitor and document it, those forms needed to be updated. And so we have a better way of tracking how often those are being monitored and looked at.
Cool. And so the bad thing is that we might wind up sometimes keeping information longer than we need to, and in other cases, discarding information which might be material from an evidentiary point of view. Is that the possible bad scenario?
Correct.
Got you. Okay. Thank you for that. I wanted to turn to response times. Our target response time is 5.8 minutes. Average response time is 6.1 minutes. I've been listening to these reports for years now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like that our response time has dropped in a bad way, meaning it hasn't, it's higher than it's been in past reports. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's actually increased our response time. Yes.
Can you tell us why you think that is?
Even though it says that our calls for service have increased, but if you look at it and compare it to 2020, we had 60 to 70, 80% staffing. So there were more calls to respond to the calls, which would reduce response time. As of recent, our staffing levels are in the 40s. So we don't have as many cars available or patrol or staffing available.
Okay. Okay. Have our at the patrol level, our officers, at least, well, I'm not asking you to anecdotally, have you in any way quantified any reports or characterizations from our officers about the quality of information they get from 911 dispatchers at all?
No, any issues typically that's had with those are brought up immediately. So we work well with 911. So that has not been an issue that's been brought to me.
Okay, well, thank you. And the recruiting efforts to bulk up, I think the last BLET class was 4 people or 6 people graduated?
Four.
And how many are in this upcoming class?
We started with 16, we're down to 15.
Okay. And have recruiting efforts that, we're not over COVID, but since there's been somewhat of a relaxation in COVID strictures of late, has that had any positive impact on the ability to do more recruiting, get to more events, do more outreach, or is it still kind of muted because of COVID?
We have been doing a lot more events, a lot more pop-up events. We just had one at Southport where we had a first responders event where fire, 911, and Sheriff's Department was there. The biggest issue that we face is the competitive wages. So we lose a lot to all other agencies because we're just not competitive. Right. I mean, and that's an issue across the nation. There's just not as many people that are joining law enforcement. So the agencies that they are joining have a competitive wage, and we just aren't able to compete.
Do you, in final question, back to the reduced or the increased response time, which is very concerning to me, other than more people or more staff, is there anything else that contributes to that or anything substantive that the council can do to help your department get those response times down, or does it just come down to people being able to take the calls?
You know, I think a lot of it has to do with we just need more officers on the street. You know, there are more cars out due to the pandemic, so there's more traffic for them to contend with, but it's just we need more officers to be available for the calls.
Okay. Chief Montgomery, thank you so much. And again, thank you for your service to the city, for answering the call during some challenging times, and appreciate all you do. Please give our regards to the men and women under your command. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Other colleagues with questions or comments for Chief Montgomery? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for your report. Appreciate you being here and helping us understand all of this information. I just had a couple questions about the misdemeanor diversion program. These numbers look really great, 374 people enrolled, 100% completion rate. I was wondering if you could, and only 16 people who have reoffended out of 368 participants. So it seems like it's doing great work. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how y'all decide whether to refer an offender to misdemeanor diversion or to prosecute for a misdemeanor, whether that's based on the offense that they're accused of or their history or some combination of factors. If you could just give us a little bit more insight into that.
I do believe you covered it. We do look at the history, you know, and the offense. And, you know, a lot of times it's hard to say, you know, we move the age up to 26 or older. You know, you may have someone who has hit hard times and 28 years old and never has a history. Why would we, you know, want to prosecute that? We would defer them to the program. So we realize that people have come upon hard times, and we would like to give them all the resources to be able to assist them so that they will not have the criminal record, but it is based on their history and the type of offense.
Great, thank you. Do you have a sense of what percentage of people who are charged with just a misdemeanor offense or multiple misdemeanor offenses are referred to the program?
I don't have that information available to me now. I could get that for you.
That'd be great, thank you. And when you say the type of offense, what types of offenses would you exclude somebody from the program for?
Probably serious assaults or domestic violence situations, or anything that's violent in nature.
Okay. So any low-level misdemeanor, you would qualify?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So like you said before, you know, that you'd expanded the age up to 26, but you sometimes go over 26. is there any reason for that age limit to apply in any case for a first misdemeanor at any age? Like, do you think that there's a point to the age limit?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. I'm wondering if there's a reason to limit the misdemeanor diversion program to folks under 26. And I know that you said that you sometimes ignore that guideline for people who, as you said, may have fallen on hard times. But the program is going so well, and the expansion of the age up to 26 doesn't seem to have had any negative impacts. I'm wondering what you think about a program that didn't have an age limit at all.
So really, with it just saying up to 26, we really don't, because it is officer discretion and case by case. So
okay,
really, it probably could be that there's not necessarily an age limit.
Great. Thank you. I enjoyed reading all of the information about the personal stories as well, about what folks have been doing. It's been, a really hard 18 months, and all of our first responders have had to deal with a really intense environment. Just want to appreciate you and your staff for the work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Colleagues, other questions or comments for Chief Montgomery? All right, Chief, I have some. First of all, I wanted to just say, reading some of the heroic actions in the report were mind-boggling. The Officer Benfield, who pulled the driver from the burning car after trying to put the fire out, trying to get him out the driver's side door, got into the burning car, pulled the driver across the console. I mean, that is just heroism of the absolute first order. And then the Officer Elnesser, I'm not sure if that name is right, pronounced right, but who got into a car, flooding car, to pull a person out of that car as the, in the most precarious of positions, that she actually got into the car as it was. I mean, she could have easily died in that situation. And I am just in awe. Whenever I read of these activities I know that I could never do. And so I hope you'll pass on my appreciation and what I know is the council's appreciation of these. I mean, those are 2 lives saved by actions that are absolutely heroic. I've appreciated reading all the community activities, the community outreach, and wanted to just say that Take Back the Night this year, I was so glad that we went back out. It was a great night. We didn't have the number of neighborhoods we usually have, but we had a lot of neighborhoods this year back in action. And I wanted to thank everybody who in the department, Kimberly and everybody else who makes that possible. It was a really great night in all the neighborhoods. I have just a couple of things to I wanted to just say about the wages. We have to have competitive wages. And I have talked to the manager, I've urged her, and I know she is very planning to do this, to bring us out of cycle, whatever it is necessary, to get our wages to be competitive at the entry level with every other department. My understanding from my discussions with her is that as our officers get more veteran, that our wages are quite competitive, but not as the entry level. And we need to make that happen. And I just will say that I'll be totally supportive of that and look forward to receiving that. On the misdemeanor diversion, so we at one point, so after raise the age, there was additional staff capacity in the Criminal Justice Resource Center to take additional people, Mayor Pro Tem. And at that time, we gathered a group of people together, Chief Davis, the sheriff, DA, and others, and raised the age from 21 to 26. I also advocated what you just talked about, which is having no age limit for the misdemeanor diversion program. The thing that I would say is this: 26 up to 26. The assumption is that you will be for especially for a first-time misdemeanor, unless it's one of the categories that Chief Montgomery mentioned. The assumption is that you will be assigned to misdemeanor diversion. I think that assumption should be the norm for any age. We know that by 26, most of the misdemeanors are from people who are, in that age group or younger. So there wouldn't be a whole lot, but I do think that should be the assumption. And when we moved up to 26, it was with the understanding we would go back and revisit this. And so I think that we should revisit. And I think that that will be something, hopefully, that we will be doing. And it's not just us, it takes the justice system to move it. But I do hope that, again, I won't be here for it, but I hope that you all will all keep that in mind, the opportunity to revisit that and raise that age. I continue to think that the best single measure of how we're doing with gun violence is the number of people shot, and we're almost exactly where we were last year, Chief. I think we had 122 last year. We have 120 now. The homicides are up, but as I said last year, when they weren't as high as previously, that depends a lot on where you get shot and how close you are to the hospital and those kinds of things. But the number of people shot, we're almost where we were last year, and that's very dismaying. It's an enormous number of people shot in Durham last year, and it's really hard to see that number continue to be where it is. On the property crimes, are there reasons besides people staying home from the pandemic, which you said that people staying home from the pandemic cause fewer burglaries, home burglaries, but we really seem to be down across the board. Do you have any other thoughts about why property crime is down and violent crime is down a little bit? Fortunately, our aggravated assaults are down. But do you have any thoughts about that, about property crime, any other reasons that you can think of it might be down?
I think it has to do a lot with more people at home. A lot less people are working, so you have more people that are around the property that would pretty much prevent anyone from attempting to commit these type crimes, because usually those are done when individuals aren't at home or no one's around to see them. So I think that plays a really big role in it.
Thank you. Well, those are my comments. I want to appreciate you, Chief. It is hard to step into a job like you have, and you've done a great job. We are so grateful to you and for your service to the department and to our community and the ways in which you are leading us. And we know that we'll have a new chief soon, but you're the chief now, and we are just extremely grateful to you. So I want to really express my appreciation. Colleagues, any final comments or questions for Chief Montgomery? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your comments. And I do want to note that I have a growing concern around the increase in rapes as well. And I just wanted to ask specifically, when you say you're adding from supplemental, where are you pulling from? So exactly who's coming in to do the patrols on the supplemental side versus overtime? So overtime, I assume, is like a patrol officer conducting overtime work. And
so sorry.
Go ahead,
So it's open to any officer to work the supplemental shift hours, and they are paid time and a half. So any investigator, supervisor, any officer can pick up these supplemental times and answer calls.
Okay. And I just wanted to know as well, I do thank you for stepping into the role. I appreciate similarly that I'm not as extroverted, and so I can appreciate the kind of nervousness that might come with being on a presentation like this. You're doing a wonderful job. I just wanted to say that and say thank you again for the service of our folks in blue. I am mindful that and I want to say it right. I was hesitant to even mention it, but the dog that was shot, Dargo, am I saying
Daro.
Daro. Is Daro back at work, or?
He is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
I want to also thank our K-9 service workers as well.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, any further questions or comments for Chief Montgomery? Chief, thank you. We really appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. And I will pass along your message to our officers. You know, most of the officers feel like that's just doing their job and not heroism, but that is honestly was what made this a little easier to be the chief, as this is a premier agency and there are a lot of great officers here.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for saying that. And that's the way we view it as well. And I really, they may view it as everyday work. It's heroism for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, we have now item 19, and then we have the closed session. So we'll move with dispatch to item 19. I see Ms. Youngblood is with us. And Ms. Youngblood, glad to have you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Regina Youngblood, Human Resources Director, here to answer any questions that you have about this informational item.
Ms. Youngblood, I believe that what you want from us is some guidance around the preferred alternative. Is that correct?
That is correct, please.
All right. So colleagues, any comments or questions on item 19? Councilmember Middleton and then Councilmember Freeman.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Regina. Good to see you. I was going to say very quickly, at least as I remember it, the city manager was going to go back and kind of do some pondering. So I was under the impression that she would kind of frame the discussion today based upon what she pondered since the last week. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that Ms. Youngblood could do that for us if you'd like. Ms. Youngblood, why don't you do some framing for us, because I agree that's exactly what happened. Some pondering took place.
I can do some framing for you. So when we last spoke about this matter, I saw Wanda jump on. Wanda, do you want to go ahead and take that?
Ms. Youngblood, you're free to frame.
Okay, so when last we brought this item and this topic to you, we had proposed paying for testing for our employees at on-site locations, partnering with CVS Health. There were concerns raised by council members and the mayor about how we would pay for that testing and the cost of that testing possibly having an impact on our insurance fund. And we were asked to go back and find some options to shift the cost of testing to the unvaccinated employees. Speaking with the city manager about her intent for us to have a testing program that lasts for 12 weeks, we talked about some options that are laid forth for you here in this memo. It is clear to me that we're going to be doing some testing that could later be preceded or by some a testing mandate, a vaccination mandate.
Ms. Youngblood, there are three options, really four options, I guess, if you include the vaccine mandate. But I know that what our administration would like to do before a vaccine mandate is to, at least for the next 90 days, have a vaccine home testing protocol. And you've really given us three options. As I read the options, the one that you liked the one that the administration liked the least was the first option. Am I correct? I am. It's too much administrative burden. You would have to be doing a whole lot of checking of everybody's tests.
That is correct.
Between the two other options, both of which I thought were very reasonable options, Did you have a preference? Does the administration have a preference?
Option 3.
Option 3. Can you tell us why option 3 is your favorite?
Well, I can tell you.
Is this where we want to go, Councilmember Middleton? Getting our.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. This is what I needed. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think we all need this.
Yes, option 3 is the least disruptive for the organization. It encompasses our original plan to order testing and have it be orderly because it is provided on site by one provider that we contract with. It allows us then to shift the burden of the cost of that testing to employees in the way that we normally do a wellness rate consideration. So we're calling it a surcharge. And so we would change our wellness requirements within this plan year. And we typically have the effect of an individual who either does or doesn't complete their wellness requirements. That effect happens in the next plan year. So when they sign up in open enrollment, they see their new plan costs and they are higher, if they did not complete the wellness requirements. So we would be adding the requirement to be vaccinated as a wellness requirement, and then the cost would be recovered in the next plan year. It does, so the option 2, the reason why we don't prefer option 2 is it requires that we create another open enrollment just for those individuals who would be impacted by the decision. And we were changing premiums in this current year.
Ms. Youngblood, I thought you all did in 2 weeks an amazing job of getting these options together. I agree that option 3 is the best. I'm very supportive of it. I think it does everything we want. It doesn't force you all to do a lot of extra administrative work, which did worry me, of course, with option 1, but also with option 2. And it does make it so that people who are getting the test will be paying for their tests, albeit not at the time of the test, but at a later time. And I think that's fair. I think it's fair. People, and the other thing is, it means people have a lot of advance warning. You know that this charge is coming to you, and you have the opportunity to get the vaccine, and then you don't have to, there's no charge to you. And so it gives people, I think, a real fair, it's fair to our employees. It gives them the choice. And I think it's, yeah, I like option 3. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the words that you used, you said a lot of advance warning. So I kind of wanted to pop in here to just give a little bit of insight into what it means when you don't comply with whatever our, rules are around wellness. And it is a warning, but it's not way in advance. On a typical year, the wellness activities have to be completed by the December of the calendar year for the next plan year. So just wanted to make that really clear because we know we have a lot of people listening and we want our employees to, have some time during this testing phase to really, really think about how important, it is to try and keep themselves safe, keep their family safe, keep their coworkers safe. And yes, they do need a little bit of extra time. If people were making a quick decision, it would already be made. But at a certain time, that window will close for a decision to get the vaccine or not. And it is not way off. We have not actually set that time frame yet, but we are setting it sort of based on this conversation today in terms of which option the council provides us the direction to move in. But certainly that qualification date is not going to be beyond December.
Thank you for that important corrective, Madam Manager. You're right. I think that's having that information is really important and is not way off. All right, colleagues, other comments or questions? I guess any questions or any thoughts about which option you like? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam Manager. And again, Ms. Youngblood. I like option 3 as well, but a line in option 3 caught my attention. It is possible that testing costs may not be fully recovered. So other than an employee who may have availed themselves of testing and then left before they could be assessed the charge, is there any other reason why costs would not be fully recovered?
No.
So that oh man, I'm coming for a job at HR.
You figured it out. You got it.
Thank you so much, Regina. I appreciate it.
They're not hiring you.
Yeah, you definitely do not want me.
I'm looking at you. I'm listening to you. I'm
not even mad. I'm not even mad about that.
You don't really qualify.
Javier was like, Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Well, that's because she used to work in HR. She sees you. She looks at you. She sees all the things you say. Okay. Other comments or thoughts about the item 3? I guess Councilmember Middleton and myself for alternative 3 have expressed our support, but I want to hear from others. Councilmember Caballero and then Councilmember Reese.
I appreciate the clarity from staff and all the work. It makes our decision so much easier. The only question I have is what does where it says other considerations with President Biden's executive order, what does that do? How does that impact us?
Well, if we are going with option 3, it really does not impact us as much. Now, there could be some, so no, it doesn't impact us as much. And so there could be some nuance in the legal interpretation of we pay versus they pay. But no matter what, we have a wellness program, and our wellness program being revised, as long as it is revised legally and does not assess too much of a burden on an employee, which is described in this memo, we can do that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. I think I said Council Member Reese and then Mayor Pro Tem. Can I ask you
thank
before
you.
we go? Just
Councilmember Caballero.
Councilmember Caballero, did you have, are you in supportive of option 3 while we're going through this?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Reese?
Councilmember Caballero asked what I was going to ask about. I'm all set. Thank you. Option 3 sounds awesome. It's great to have great staff.
It is. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also in support of option 3. I just had a question about the amount of money that we can charge as a surcharge, because I know it's capped, as y'all said, at 30% of the cost of the plan. Is that enough to actually capture the cost of the testing?
Yes, and so basically it would be more than enough. And so we have proposed an amount of a surcharge that is less than the maximum that we could impose.
Okay, so what would the surcharge be?
The surcharge for, if we go with option 3, it's going to be $70 per month.
70 per month, and that's enough to cover the cost of the testing?
That is correct.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I support option 3 as well. I think that we should, when this 90-day testing period is over, revisit the vaccine mandate and think about that more comprehensively though as well. Thank you.
I am 100% sure that that is in the manager's plans. So, Councilmember Freeline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, I'm also a fan of option 3 and wanted to just applaud the staff for this creative solution. When I checked in with the city manager on Tuesday and thought about the wellness requirement, which, I was a new staff member last year. I was sworn in September and had 3 months to do my wellness requirement, go on a jog or something. And I thought, I asked question, what's this about? I think it's a great policy to have, and to utilize it in this way, I thought was just a really ingenious solution to a tricky, sticky problem. And the timing just works out great. And best of all, I don't have to go run a 5K to be in compliance because I'm vaccinated. So anyway, I think like Charlie said earlier, it's great to have good staff and creative leadership. And I'm just appreciating that in this moment.
Agree, but you still need to run that 5K. All right, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I would also add, I'm supportive of option 3. I'm still on the fence. But I just wanted to note, I didn't want to just discount folks' anxiety around getting the vaccination. And so just being mindful that that anxiety building or mounting could cause some performance issues. And so I just want to make sure HR is paying close attention that no one's being dinged in this around figuring out how to get to that point by December. So just mindful. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Ms. Youngblood, I believe you have your guidance.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
And we are very appreciative of you all pulling this together in the last couple of weeks, giving us the alternatives, letting us know the alternative that is most, the best alternative in your mind. And I think you've heard that we all agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And, we appreciate you. Madam Manager.
So just sort of to bring closure, we will, we will have the contract that was on the last work session that we will need approval for. So we will bring that contract back in order to have CVS to provide that service under option 3. So
thank you so much, Madam Manager. All right. Well done to our staff. Councilmember Middleton.
Does this need to be codified with a vote, or is this sufficient?
When we get the contract.
The contract, okay, got you.
Yeah, that's the thing we'll need to vote on.
Word, thank you.
I think we've given the option, the thumbs up. Is that all right, Madam Manager?
That is correct.
Cool, thank you, sir.
Colleagues, we'll now turn to the city clerk for a report on our appointments.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The council has nominated for reappointment Aubrey D. Zinnick at the Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau representing food service. And the second and final nomination is council has agreed to re-advertise the HASAC vacancy representing the faith community. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, we have one more item, which is the closed session item. And I'm going to ask our attorney if she would come on the screen. Madam Attorney, can you restate the language? We've voted already, haven't we, Madam Attorney?
You did. Yes, Mr. Mayor, you did vote on the motion, but it's just a closed session for attorney-client consultation, if that makes you feel better.
All right. Do we need to vote on it again?
No, you voted at the beginning of the meeting.
All right. Thank you. All right, colleagues, I'm now going to declare that we are going into closed session, and I'm going to ask only those people who are